The sigil of House Tully. Brian nodded. I know the trout isn't very well done, but Owen Fossoe was insistent that you receive it. Her mother would have never knitted crooked stitches. Sansa knew only one person capable of such terrible needlework, Arya. Her mind swam with the possibilities. Did Arya send the scarf to King's Landing? What were his exact words? He didn't say much. Lady Catelyn gave him the cloth at the God's Eye. She desired that you wear this at your betrothal. Brian stammered. That was all he said, she asked. I tried to ask more, Lady Sansa. I really did, but he only repeated that Lady Catelyn gave him the cloth and desired you to wear this at your betrothal. I pointed out that while this could cover your head, it was hardly a maiden's cloak. I don't see how you can wear this at the wedding without giving insult to the Lannisters. A flustered Brian said. Arya had told everyone that she would never marry. But their lady mother had instructed both of them on the details of a wedding ceremony. Her sister knew that the correct maiden's cloak would be the stark dire wolf, not the Tully trout. And this Fossoe received this scarf at the God's Eye where her brothers had just won a victory. A spark of hope grew in Sansa's chest. She handed the needlework back to Brian. Sir, find Owen Fossoe and return this to him. Tell him I cannot wear the sign of my mother's house. The Lannisters will not allow me to wear the stark dire wolf. Sansa rooted about her wedding garments for the sample the seamstress had left. With a knife, she hacked off a piece of the maiden's cloak. Give this to him. Tell him that I shall wear this as a cloak and a veil at my wedding. But why would Fossoe? Sansa's voice sharpened. Lady Brian, will you keep the oath that you swore to my mother? Brian nodded. I pledged my sword and service. I will give my life for yours, if need be. Good. Then follow these orders. Do not speak to anyone but Owen Fossoe. Make certain no one else hears my message. Sansa handed Brian a strip of cloth, light grey on ice white. They heard laughter from many of the rooms and windows of the brothel. An ornate lantern of gilded brass and scarlet glass hung over the entrance, casting a garish pink light on the cobbled streets. Guards in the flowing yellow robes of dawn watched girls in flowing silks prance in and out of the two-story structure. Do all Dornish people spend so much time at the brothels? Arya complained. Well, Oberyn Martell has quite the reputation, with both men and women. He has 8 bastard daughters. Jon said. Does he really need to bring his daughters to Château's? Arya said. Oberyn Martell is not ashamed of going to a brothel. I doubt the Sand Snakes care either. The Maesters think the salty Dornish follow their Roynish blood. Mother Rowan had many lovers, like the Great Turtle and the Crab King. Jon said. Arya wrinkled her nose. I did not need to know that. You asked, sister. Jon said. Are you ready? Arya nodded. She pushed the cart forward. Lemon tarts. Lemon tarts, she cried. The House Martell guards ignored her, but the painted ladies happily threw her copper stars. Some even gave a silver stag. Arya made her way past the entrance into a room full of mosaics of women engaged in acts that would have met with the full approval of the Rhoynar. Arya sold her lemon tarts with a smile, speaking to no one unless she was spoken to first. She was just a street rat, looking to make a few coppers. She kept her eyes at waist level, looking for a girl or boy with skin the color of teak. Her cart was almost empty when a tall angry woman with her long brown hair bound in a rat tail stood up to confront her. You, boy, are you one of Varys' little birds? Oberyn Sand called out. A long spear clattered by her sandaled feet. That's not a boy. That's a girl. A tall lady in lilac robes tinged with cream and copper said in a bored tone. Why are you here? The third sand snake fanned herself with pale soft hands. Oh, leave her alone. The poor girl merely wants to make a few coppers. I love lemon tarts, sweeterling. Arya offered a tart to the girl in the green and white gown. Then she scurried away, making for the exit, until she saw a flash of skin smooth as polished ebony. Arya followed until she reached an alcove with a white feather bed. The girl was extraordinarily pretty, dressed in flowing yellow silks with a beaded gold belt that matched the gilded collar at the neck. She was as tall as Sansa with wide eyes and skin darker than teak. I am looking for Elras. Arya blurted out. The young girl smiled. Oh, are you learning how to read as well? Yes. Do you know where Alras is? Arya said. Right here. A comely youth in green and brown said. His skin was the color of nut brown ale, lighter than the girl's polished jet. Yeah, I have 2 books for you. He handed her 2 slim tomes. The second is an exercise workbook to copy words as you pronounce them. Thank you. There was a sweetness about the whore, and a genuine interest in the books. Do you want to share? She said to Arya. Elioa, let me speak to her in private. The Summer Island girl left, leaving them alone. Alras looked amused. You look just like him. You have the same long face and grey eyes. What did you send to the Riverlands? Arya hissed. Alras laughed. And the same cunning. The Sphinx is the riddle, not the riddler. He wants to see you outside. Meet us at sunset at the eastern door of the dragon pit. The Sphinx nodded, handing her 3 coppers for the last unsold tart. Arya made her way out of Shattairs and ditched the cart before heading south to the harbour to meet John. The setting sun shone through the charred walls, forming strange misshapen windows on the upper levels of the dragon pit. The great dome had collapsed long ago, and the cavernous interior was one giant mess, with much of the tumbled stone scavenged for graveyards, septs, manses, and buildings elsewhere in King's Landing. The bronze clamps which had held the stonework together were pried or hacked out, and the only remaining iron jutted into the sky, like a dragon's wings. It was a cruel jape, John thought. Had the pit been open to the sky on that fateful day, some of the royal dragons might have escaped. Instead, they all died at the hands of crazed small folk led by an even more deranged prophet. A dragon should never be chained. Arya perched over the eastern gate, peering suspiciously into the growing darkness. The great doors had been sealed for over a century, and small folk and highborn alike believed the building to be cursed. For good reason, John thought, as he gazed over the blackened ruins and the ashes left by the massive destruction. The dragon pit was haunted by death and fire. Only a few desperate whores from Flea Bottom entertained clients nearby, and none did so inside the pit. Someone is coming. Alone. Arya said. A hunched-over begging brother in rough spun shabby robes approached, tapping a stout quarterstaff, like a blind man probing for obstacles. John tossed down the twisted rope ladder purchased that afternoon from a ship chandler. The robed figure strapped the staff to his back and climbed up gracefully, taking John's hand for the dismount. The Sphinx's comely face emerged from the brown cowl. How did you know? Alras said. Your quarterstaff is polished wood. It would have been stolen from you in Flea Bottom. John pulled up the ladder. Alras, this is your sister, Arya Stark. We have met. She spoke with a soft Dornish drawl. Were you followed? John said in a more serious voice. I spotted the spies outside Shattairs. I lost them in Flea Bottom. But Varys knows of me. He found me in Eel Alley 2 days after I sent the wooden Sphinx to you in the Riverlands. How much does Varys know? John said. I have been careful to avoid his little birds, but I posed as a trader from lies. I sailed to King's Landing from Planky Town, and Hull and his spies may discover that. And Varys also guessed that I was a woman. Alras said. Does he know that you are a Martell? John asked. Why would he know that? Alras said. You came from Dorne. His spies are watching Oberyn Martell and your sisters at Shattairs. And he knows that you are only pretending to be a man. John said. Perhaps, but Varys relies on little birds, young boys and girls. They are not allowed inside Shattairs. And I have only sent messages to my father and sisters through Elioa and others. I have not spoken to them directly. Alras said. Petter Baelish is a whoremonger. Could his spies be aware of you? John asked. At Shattairs. Alras shook her head. Shattair is my mother's sister. My father gave her the money to start 15 years ago. Baelish has tried many times to buy her out. Shattairs is one of the safest places in King's Landing from both Varys and Baelish. Arya's eyes popped. Is that girl related to you? Elioa, yes, she is my cousin. A sweet girl and quite clever. I am teaching her how to read. But she is a whore. Arya said, surprised. Love-making is not scorned in the Summer Isles. There is no shame to serve at a pillow house after a maiden or a youth has flowered. Pleasure is a gift from the gods. Alras said. Jon chuckled. The Summer Islanders make the Dornish seem like the Northmen. The Sphinx smiled enigmatically. You know nothing. But enough about the Summer Isles. Why are you here in King's Landing, Jon Snow? Why do you think? Jon said. You came here to rescue your sister, Lady Sansa. You were not invited but you planned to attend the wedding. Perhaps. But why are you here, Alras? Why did you come to King's Landing? Jon said. I landed in Sunspear when Edric Dane arrived with Amory Lorque. We want what Dorne has always wanted, revenge for the death of Elia Martell and her children. Alras said. What did Lorque say? Jon said. Tywin Lannister gave orders to kill Aegon and Rhaenys. That would allow him to declare fealty to Robert Baratheon and make his daughter queen. Alras said. Jon turned, his eyes sweeping over the husk of the dragon pit. His brother and sister were murdered to win political favor for House Lannister. He tried not to think about his dreams of Rhaenys. What of Elia Martell? Lorque claims there were no orders on Princess Elia. Gregor Clegane did that on his own. Elia Martell fought desperately to save Aegon but Clegane killed him and raped her. Alras said. Who else knew? Who else besides Lorque and Clegane? Jon said. I don't know. Do you suspect others? Alras said. At Riverrun, I asked Jaime Lannister. He said he would have defended the royal children with his life. But Varys was in King's Landing. Did he know? How did the Lannisters get into the city? And how did Lorque and Clegane get into Maegor's Holdfast? Jon asked. Lorque says he scaled the walls of the Holdfast. Alras said. Arya snorted. Amory Lorque. He is fatter than Fat Tom, and older. He was younger during the rebellion but Arya is right. The walls of the Holdfast are high and thick. Did Princess Elia have any guards? Even a few men could defend Maegor's against an army. Jon said. They killed all of her retainers. Her companions, her ladies-in-waiting, her guards. Anyone who could tell the truth about her murder was slain. Alras said. Not everyone. Varys must know. Jon said. He has spies all over the Red Keep. Who can trust the spider? Who knows the extent of his plots or lies? He whispers to Uncle Doran that he would help the Martells. It has been 16 years. Nothing has been done. Justice delayed is justice denied. Alras spat. It might be too late for justice, but not for revenge. Princess Elia's story is not over. Jon said. What can I do to help? Alras said. How many little birds are watching you? Jon asked. Hard to say. There are urchins everywhere in King's Landing. I see them on the docks, in the fish market, at the Blushing Maiden, near the September of Baelor, and on the walk to Château's. I only spot them when they start to follow. Alras said. Let them follow you. We need to flush out the spider. Jon said. Most of King's Landing reeked of piss and sweat but the forges of the Street of Steel chased the stench away. A strong clean odor hung thick over the hill, honest smoke from charcoal mixed with the fires of coal dust and molten iron and steel. As Jon walked up, the streets widened, the beggars disappeared, and the buildings grew sturdier and refined. Ironmongers peddled old blades, horseshoes and tools at the bottom of the hill. In the middle, blacksmiths banged out shields and mail shirts at open forges. But the peak was reserved for the finest armorers who dealt in suits of polished plate armor. Everywhere, there was the clang of the anvil, the whoosh of the bellows, and blasts of hot air heavy with sulfur and limestone. The Street of Steel had profited from the war. The hill bustled with young serving girls and hard-working apprentices. Signs for jewelers, silversmiths and goldsmiths abounded. Those shops would gild and adorn armor, shields, and swords with gems, gold and silver filigree, roaring lions, silver trout, and golden roses. Jon was of the north. Steel was meant for battle, not parties. He ducked into a narrow street between two smithies. A large green placard twisted in the wind, inscribed with a jester of unusual height juggling knives. John entered the inn. The jester's green brought back fond memories of the Quill and Tankard in Old Town. Cheerful serving wenches exchanged tankards of wine, ale, and cider for silver stags and copper stars. Seamen, smiths, and singers swapped bawdy tales and stories. The food was good here, beef stew bubbling in a large cauldron over the fire, fowls roasting on spits, and onion soup served in hollowed-out bread. John gave the blushing young girl a smile and 2 silver stags 4 mugs of ale, toasted bread and cheese, and 2 seats near the roaring fire. The cider here tastes worse than piss. A sturdy brown-haired man sat down to his right. John handed over the tankard of ale. And how would you know what piss tastes like? Owen Fossoe laughed, but his eyes roamed the taproom to make certain they would not be overheard. When he was satisfied, Owen took out a long red and blue bolt and a short strip of grey and white. Brian gave me these. She spoke to Sansa Stark. Lady Sansa declared that she could not wear a cloak of House Tully and that the Lannisters would not allow her to wear the Stark dire wolf. John nodded. What is the other cloth? Sansa Stark cut that piece from her maiden cloak. She says that she plans to wear a cloak and veil of these colors. And John, Sansa demanded that Brian tell me only when no one else could hear. Owen said, handing over the grey and white cloth. Did Brian say anything else? That she would protect Sansa, or die trying. Then she glared at me, like I was at fault for not telling her more. Owen said. John nodded. Whatever her faults, Brian was loyal. She was more of a true knight than those with great names or expensive armor. He threw the Tully sigil into the flames, and watched as the fire consumed Arya's handiwork. Tell me what you have found out. The wedding is in 4 days' time. The banquet will be held at the small hall of the Tower of the Hand, but the marriage will be elsewhere. What do you know of the Red Keep? Owen said. Through Balerian's eyes, John had explored extensively the network of tunnels and the hallways of the castle. The Black Tom prowled with impunity. Still, 3 days was not enough to uncover all the secrets of the Red Keep. Just tell me everything. Leave nothing out. The Red Keep has a central set of stairs that separates the 2 levels. The Tower of the Hand, Maegor's Holdfast, the small council and the courtyards are below the steps. The Great Hall with the Iron Throne, the White Sword Tower, the Godswood, the Maiden Vault, and the Royal September are above the steps. Tyrion and Sansa will walk from the Tower of the Hand to be married in the Royal September. Only after the wedding is done, will they go back to the small hall for the banquet. Owen said. So, they walk up the steps in the afternoon, and then return down the steps near sundown. Owen nodded. He looked eager to say more. What is in the Royal September? John asked. The usual. 7 walls for the 7 aspects of the faith. There are candles on each altar, and a burning brazier in the center. Owen answered. And who is guarding Sansa? She has 4 main guards. 1 of regular size, Loras Tyrell, and 3 giants. Brian. Sir Osmond Kettle Black. And the Hound. Owen said. Kettle Black. Who is he? John said. Some lackey of Cersei. They say the Queen wishes him to join the White Cloaks. Big, broad, dumb as a stump. As tall as Clegane. John asked. No one is the size of the Clegane brothers. Kettle Black is as tall and broad as Brian. And his sigil is a fucking black kettle. John smiled. Your coat of arms is a red apple. Apples are important. They feed people. They are the best fruit, a gift of the 7 to the reach. A red apple is much better than a black kettle. If you say so, Owen. How many will attend the wedding? The Royal September can only hold 100 comfortably. But that is not the most interesting thing. There are stories about Tyrion Lannister, that he is still married to a Lannisport whore. So King Joffrey intends to bring whores to the castle, to shame his uncle. Owen blurted out. Whores to attend a wedding in the Red Keep. Surely they will not be allowed into the September. The whores would not be allowed in the Great Hall or the September. But on the way to the September, there are courtyards and a lower bailey. It will be a walk of shame, to show that the imp is a whoremonger. Owen said. How many whores do they plan to bring? An intrigued Jon asked. I do not know. The Tyrells, Lannisters and Martells will be in the September, but there are hundreds, perhaps thousands more in the keep. Lordlings, knights, guards, servants, even wealthy merchants. They will line the hallways and corridors in the lower castle. Owen said. Jon shook his head. Why would Tywin Lannister allow such a thing? To teach his son a lesson. To show that despite the defeats in the Riverlands, he is still a man to be feared. If he would do such a thing to his son, what will he do to his enemies? Owen said. Cruelty is not strength. Lord Tywin has been fortunate in his enemies. Jon said. Luck is a two-sided coin. Tywin Lannister may be harsh, but Garland believes the plot was hatched by Joffrey. He is a cruel boy. Owen said. Where will you be during the wedding? In the Royal September. House Fossoway is not a great house, but we are loyal bannermen to the Tyrells. I will be seated with Sir Garland and his wife, behind Lord Mace and Lady Olenna. And what of Lady Margaery? She will attend at Joffrey's side. In a few moons, she will be queen. Owen said. Jon kicked the ashes of the Tully sigil deeper into the fire. He wondered where the Red Viper and the Sand Snakes would sit in the September. Breakfast was coarse barley bread and a hunk of ripe cheese, washed down with watered-down ale. They woke before sunrise and made their way south through darkened tunnels to a trail besides the river. A light drizzle covered the city, although no one cared about the fog and damp near the wharves and Fishmonger Square. Later, the streets near the river gate would be thronged with urchins, small wives and soldiers, but in the early light, the market had yet to truly wake. Oystermen, herring sellers, codwives and shrimpers were setting up stalls, preparing for the morning rush of stewards, cooks and sailors. Jon and Arya made their way north, a few Winter Town boys trailing discreetly in their wake. The blushing maiden did not quite deserve the risk name. No tumult of wild revelers or loud minstrels or dancing ladies greeted them. Jon could see why Alras had chosen this inn as her base. It was a comfortable place, suitable for easy conversation, peaceful gossip, and the exchange of news by travelers, far from the hurly-burly of the docks. The smell of freshly baked bread wafted through the windows of the taproom. I bet that is one of them. Arya whispered, pointing to a dark-haired boy with bruises over his face. Jon wondered who had beaten him. There is another one. She had spotted a short girl, hiding under a wagon wheel with a noticeable limp. One leg was clearly shorter than the other. We will see when Alras starts. Jon said. The Sphinx came out, leading a black mare with a mane and tail the color of fire. An orange saddlebag held a rather conspicuous note sealed by the golden spear of House Martell. Rather an obvious trap. Arya said. The little birds do not know that. Jon placed the spyglass to his eye. My guess is that Varys trained them to steal ledgers, charts and letters. And with the sigil of House Martell, they will run to inform the eunuch immediately. What is in the letter? Arya asked. A map of the Red Mountains. It shows the numbers of Dornish troops massing on the Boneway and the Prince's Pass. From there, they can march to the Stormlands and the Reach. Jon said. Is the letter true? Who knows? The Dornish love to exaggerate their numbers. And the Three Kingdoms have been fighting over the marches for hundreds of years. It is all rather stupid. There are a few fertile meadows and hidden valleys, but the Red Mountains are barren lands with few people. Alras mounted the horse and the short girl hobbled out into her path. When Alras slowed and threw the girl a copper penny, the dark-haired boy scurried over and lifted the letter. The Sphinx prepared to ride, seeming oblivious to the theft. As the sand steed cantered down the street, a different boy in threadbare clothes followed. Chet and Clydas, the two of you go after the Sphinx on the Street of Sisters. Find the other little birds. Jon said. Arya and I will chase down the letter. Look, there is another man following Alras. Chet pointed to a tall man in purple robes, mounted on a brown palfrey. Jon frowned. Those robes were trimmed with ermine. Who is that? Arya hissed. Jon looked through the spyglass. The man had a narrow face with dark intelligent eyes. He had been waiting in the shadows of the stable for the Sphinx to leave. I don't think he is one of the Spider's spies. Those robes are far too expensive. The little birds split up. The girl stumbled into an alley to the left. The boy following Alras stepped onto a wagon, then climbed up a ramshackle building. He ran along the rooftops north. The thief ducked to the right, heading toward the Red Keep. "My lord, there are too many. Chet and I can't track all of them," Clydas said. "He looks unarmed." "I will find out who the man on the horse is," Arya declared. "Fine. Meet you back at the Blushing Maiden. And Ari, don't get into trouble," Jon added. The dark-haired boy went up the hook, the narrow street that linked the muddy way near the docks to Egon's high hill. The Red Keep loomed in the distance to the northeast. If the boy went past the castle guards, Jon would lose him. Before he decided to attempt to summon Balerion, the little bird raced to God's Way. Instead of heading east to the Great September, the boy hurried north, past Manses and Arbors. Finally, the boy slipped through the gates of a graveyard at the very tip of the city. The waves of black water bay smashed loudly against rocks north of the city walls. Jon slowed down. In much of King's Landing, the morning fog had been burnt off by the sun. Here, the fog was thin but still wreathed the stones and tombs and funerary plaques. A solitary evergreen tree stood alone leaning on a cenotaph. Through the spyglass, he could barely read the weather-worn words, "To the best hand a king has ever known." In another time, a memorial to Septon Bath might have interested him, but Jon's spyglass focused on the figure who had walked out of a nearby vault, a stout man wearing mail and boiled leather who dropped the unlit torch to read the purloined letter. The scarred and stubbled face was hidden by a brown cowl, but Jon had no doubts of the identity. This was the spider that Arya saw in the tunnels below the Red Keep. Varys tittered, his soft white hands patting the little bird on the head. The boy eagerly accepted a small rough wool pouch and filched out a small purple object, popping it into a dirty mouth. Jon looked more intently. It was a candied plum. The eunuch handed over 2 reddish-brown coins, and then dismissed his little bird. The boy ran off before Varys tapped a stone, and disappeared back into the vault. The spider was feared throughout the 7 kingdoms for his vast network and skills at unearthing secrets. Yet he paid his spies with candied plums and copper coins. Jon had no doubt there were other spies, perhaps knights or serving wenches, but the children that fluttered on the streets of King's Landing and in the secret tunnels received virtually nothing, a pat on the hand, sweets, and a few small coins. And some of these children had been mutilated, while others starved, were beaten or died young. The graveyard lay between the Iron Gate and the Red Keep. 3 days was not enough time to discover all of Maegor's secrets, but Balerion had measured out the 6 tunnels leading from the Tower of the Hand. No passage came this far north. No passage exited in a cemetery. Somehow, one of the spies had sent a message, and the spider had come out of the Red Keep to meet the boy. Jon waited patiently until he was certain the eunuch was long gone to tap the panel, and enter the tunnel. It was a long silent walk in the dark. There were no doors, or traps, or levers hidden in the walls, and no places to hide and eavesdrop. The passage did not connect with any others under the Red Keep. Instead, it terminated in a single door. Then Jon understood. Maegor wanted no rats in his own walls. There was only one secret passage reserved for the Targaryen kings, and Varys knew. The spider knew how to enter and escape the holdfast. He had not informed Princess Elia or saved Rhaenys. Jon thought long and hard on the return back to the graveyard. Jon found Arya wandering near the bottom of the street, her interest piqued by the exotic weapon hanging on a wooden rack with other more mundane swords. It had a long crescent moon-shaped blade with a thick handle, half sword and half scythe. "That is a Dothraki arrow," Jon said, slipping behind his sister. "Is it useful in battle?" Arya asked. "The Dothraki certainly believe so. A curved blade can sweep down, so with the force of a charge, the arrow can inflict great damage. But it has drawbacks when fighting on foot. Good armor is only vulnerable at a few points: the neck, the eyes, the armpit and the joints. Thrusting is easier than slicing on the battlefield. Deadlier too," Jon said. "So stick them with the pointy end," Arya said. "That is how the water dancers fight," Jon said. "Chet and the others are still looking. They have found a dozen birds, so far." "And what about you?" Jon said. The man in purple followed Alras for a while but left her near Flea Bottom. He went to the Street of Silver instead. I caught his name when he spoke to the owner of the Silver Eel, Tichonestris. He serves the Iron Bank. Arya said. The Iron Bank of Bravos. What is he doing in King's Landing? Jon asked. Not gambling. He took out a small lacquered box, and disappeared behind a heavy guarded door. He left the eel only 10 minutes later. Arya said. Was there any expression on his face? Did he still have the box? Jon asked. Arya scrunched her nose. I think I saw the outline of the box in his saddlebag. There was a tiny hint of anger but he remained calm, like father before he was executed. That is very strange. Men who serve the Iron Bank do nothing without reason. Jon said. He remembered Archmaester Mathar's history of the Iron Bank. Couldn't he just be collecting some debt? Arya said. The Iron Bank lends to princes and kings. They would not send a banker from Bravos because a shopkeeper could not pay. Tichonestris must be here only because the interests of the Iron Bank are at stake. All the gambling dens on the Street of Silver are nothing compared to a single vault of the Iron Bank. Jon said. So what does this all mean? Arya said. I don't know. There are too many plots in this city. And we have too little time. We can't unravel all the mysteries of King's Landing but I found the spider with his little bird. He is the man you overheard 6 moons ago. Jon stopped to collect his thoughts before continuing. We have only 3 days left, and a great deal to do. Let's go north. We have a purchase to make. I thought Chet and Clydas were dealing with that. They have their orders. But we need something else. After a long walk, they arrived at the Street of Flour, the sweet smell of sugar, honey and molasses permeating the air. Below the street, children begging for bowls of brown in the maze of twisted alleys of Flea Bottom. Buildings leaned over, exhausted, on their last legs and seemingly ready to fall. Arya turned her head away. Are you all right? Jon asked. Bad memories. I killed pigeons here on these cobbled stones. I was so hungry. And I was one of the lucky ones. I didn't starve. Arya said. The hill of Rhoenis separated the wealthy lords facing the Red Keep from the slumdogs dwelling in the bottom. You survived. Jon said. Some of these children won't. They say King's Landing is the wealthiest city in the 7 kingdoms. So why are so many so poor? Arya complained. It was a hard question. Men starved in the north from famine and poor harvests. But in King's Landing, a noble could eat lamprey pie, honeyed ham and roast swan stuffed with mushrooms and oysters while servants had only stale bread to eat. The poor in Flea Bottom had even less. Jon shrugged. We cannot change the past, only the future. But we can feed children. I hear they like candied plums. Let us buy all the bags that the bakers will sell. Arya shuffled on the balls of her feet, both legs bent, and then lunged. The target dangled from the ceiling of the vault under the dragon pit, illuminated by a solitary torch. Needle stabbed through the visor of the Greedilm and broke the links of the mail coif underneath. The short and slender rapier was not strong enough to penetrate through the back of the helm. Jon raised his head at his sister's grimace. It is unlikely he will wear a full helm at the wedding. If he does, slitting the throat will be easier. She chewed her lip. I just want to make sure I do this correctly. Jon sighed. I wish I didn't have to ask this of you. But we need multiple ways out, and I am playing another role. He was filling the handle of a silver and gold stick and ball with wildfire. The holes on the mace-like ball were sealed with cork. It is a good plan. Don't worry about me. I have killed before. Arya said firmly. Her brother nodded and returned to his task. Satchels full of wildfire rested on the sand. And it was a good plan. The wildfire in the casks had been put into place. The goods had been purchased. The Wintertown boys had their orders. The Wolfwind and her sister ships were ready to sail. Arya knew the secret tunnels as well as the crypt of Winterfell. She was certain she could find her way even in the dark. As for Alras, Owen, Brian and Jane, she trusted her brother's judgment. Her only concern was House Martell. That night, John had instructed the Sphinx to speak with her family. Alrose did not know the details of their plans, but John wanted her to warn them about the pending chaos. "John, are you certain you can trust the Dornish?" Arya said in a hesitant voice. "Trust them? No. But I am sure they want to kill Lannisters. Oberyn Martell has waited 16 years for revenge for his sister. We will give him the opportunity," John said. "But will he play his role? Or will he do something foolish?" John shrugged. "Alrose says her father is considered half-mad. And that is by the Dornish, who are proud to be hot-blooded. We have planned as much as we can. The Martells give us the best chance of freeing Sansa. Remember, the most important thing, the only thing, is that you and Sansa return safely to Robb." Arya would have protested but she yawned. It was hard work moving casks about in the dark. "Get some rest. Tomorrow will be a big day. One that will be remembered for a long time." Arya closed her eyes as her brother continued to work with the Black Tom at his side. Author's notes. Balerion the cat does not fear Balerion the dragon. When she is lost, Arya encounters the three skulls, presumably Balerion, Meraxes, and Vigor, in the tunnels. Astute readers have pointed out that children who could read or write would be quite rare, likely only maesters and noble children were taught. And it is not credible you spend years teaching a child to read and write, and then cut their tongue out. But maybe Essos, like ancient Greece, had more of a tradition of learning. In any case, I see Varys and Illyrio as monsters. Anyone complicit in the death or mutilation of kids have committed heinous crimes. The toll on children in GRM is extremely high. Bran in the very beginning, the miller's two sons by Theon, Olly, Shireen, and Myrcella. Warging is really unexplored in the stories. Arya has her dreams of Nymeria and she walks into a cat in Bravos. Varami Sixskins claims that Jon could be a powerful warg but he never made any real attempt to hone his skills. Tyrion does very little to cover up his great secret. In the books, he tells Bronn first when they are escaping the Eyrie. Then he tells Shae after he slaps her for mocking him. She is trying to get him to sneak her into the Tower of the Hand but he wants her to work as a scullery maid, to keep her identity from Cersei. As soon as he tells her, Tyrion realizes it was a mistake. In the TV show, Tyrion tells both Bronn and Shae before the Battle of the Green Fork. As for whether the marriage to Sansa could be challenged, I have accelerated the rise of the Sparrows to pre-Joffrey wedding. They were lurking in the background but didn't become an issue until Cersei screws up as Queen Regent. In the books, the High Sparrow emerges after the Red and Purple weddings. Reginald Lannister only appears on TV. He is the twit who Tywin banishes back to Lannisport after he complains about working too hard. In this story, he is transposed with the Lannister men that Oberyn stabs as soon as he gets into King's Landing. Jane Poole is one of the many victims of casual cruelty in A Song of Ice and Fire. There are lots of people killed and brutalized to give credence to GRM's "the gods are cruel" notion. Part of it is an odd glorification of characters like Ramsay and Euron Greyjoy. I think GRM would argue that it enhances the suspense. Aelioa is Shatea's daughter. This plotline was never explored on the TV show but Tyrion uses her for cover when he visits Shae. This leads to her being tied to a post, whipped, and thrown out of the Red Keep naked and injured. It was never clear to me whether that was due to Cersei or Tywin. The Iron Bank has a lot of promise in the books but falls flat in the show. Or maybe it is going to fall flat in the books as well. There is a lot of potential. The bank could have ties to the Faceless Men. Baelish might be a secret agent, and I really liked the chapter where Jon bargains with the Iron Bank for a loan to help the wildlings survive the winter. But then you realize the wildlings have zilch property and how exactly is the Night's Watch a good credit? Tichonestris does have a role in the story but I am saving it for a later chapter. I don't remember it from the books but Varys feeds his network of little birds candied plums on the TV show. Of course the kids also talk because mutilated kids are a bit much even for HBO. Qyburn takes over Varys' spy network in Season 6 with boxes of sweets. The spider's web appears amazing but not when exposed to the light of day or reason. Lamprey pie, honeyed ham and roast swan stuffed with mushrooms and oysters is a meal from the Tyrion chapter right before the Battle of Blackwater. The dinner also includes creamy chestnut soup, crusty hot bread, a green salad with apples and pine nuts, buttered carrots and white beans and bacon. And this is when people are starving in the capital. GRM really enjoys his food porn. As for the secret passages, there is only one tunnel that is the escape route from Maegor's holdfast. I decided that Varys knew the tunnel and could have used it to save Elia and the children. He just chose not to. The Martells are a great concept. Oberyn has good lines, he is a unique character, hot-headed, bisexual, proud to have bastard daughters. I even admire the choice of a spear as an effective weapon. But he gets thrown away to show the costs of overreach / arrogance and that the monsters can outlast the good guys. And after Oberyn is toast, the rest of the Dawn plot is a total mess. Arianne kidnaps Myrcella, the Sand Snake's posture but don't do squat, then in the TV show, they murder Myrcella by kissing her and kill Tristan. And then they are fodder for Euron, the luckiest psychopath in the world. The whole thing stinks, but the initial premise, House Martell is the only family that can resist the dragons, is pretty neat. Chapter 32, Hour of the Wolf. Chapter text. Hour of the Wolf. The lords and commanders of the Northern Army camped on a hill overlooking the clear waters of the Blue Fork. Further upstream, the Trident dissolved into brooks and rills, the clear blue turned into sickly green, and the ground became soft and marshy. Men unloaded wagons, food and horses from docked riverboats as their leaders met in the ruins of the ancient stronghold. Few traces remained of the castle, broken foundations overgrown by weeds, a stony trail that wrapped around the hill, and the giant carved sepulchre of a long-dead king. The crypt rested at the center of what had been the yard, and the lid was worn and weathered with time, until the bas-relief showed only a smooth bearded face, and two hands folded over a cracked warhammer lying on the man's chest. Robb stood at the head of the sepulchre, turned away from the river. The ancient king's eyes faced west, toward Iron Man's Bay. Even 2,000 years ago, when the first men fought against the Andal invasion, the rivermen had been wary of Ironborn reavers. A reasonable fear, Robb thought, as ravens from Seaguard brought news of an approaching fleet of longships. "They are coming," a scout cried, pointing south at the banners bearing the Tully Trout. It was a small force of armored men and horses with a rickety wheelhouse pulled by draft horses. 7 hells. Is Edmure Tully riding in a carriage? The Smalljan spat with disdain. His uncle had completed negotiations with Lotharfrey for the betrothal. "That is likely to be my lady mother. They are traveling to the Twins so Edmure can marry," Robb said. Lord Stark. Sir Michael had shown himself to be a fine swordsman at the God's Eye, and a good choice for Robb's battle guard. "Are we attending your uncle's wedding? I have only a suit of plate, and a mail shirt. I have no fine clothes and carry no gifts worthy of House Redfort. Speak to Eddard. No doubt he carries an extra doublet and silk surcoat. I saw him powder his nose and trim his beard before battle." The Smalljan japed. "Oh, shut up, Umber. Not everyone enjoys looking and smelling like a hairy unwashed beast," Harry on Karstark said cheerfully. The Carholder had awoken at Harroway and improved rapidly as they sailed up the Trident. "We are not going to the Twins," Robb said firmly. "The Silver Eagles of Seaguard need our help. Our army heads west to repel invaders from the Riverlands. They say that Euron Greyjoy leads the rest of the Iron Fleet and that one has a fearsome reputation. We will not abandon our allies to the Crow's Eye and his band of murderers, rapers and pirates. But you must attend your uncle's wedding at the Twins." Sir Ryman blurted out. "It would be an insult. My lord father would be greatly displeased at the slight." Robb did not give two shits about the opinions of either Sir Ryman or his peevish father. The dire wolves, particularly Nymeria, snarled at the presence of the phrase. Even Grey Wind barely tolerated his squire, Perwyn, and that was the best reaction of the 3 wolves. The North came to the Riverlands not to attend banquets or beddings but to fight. "We met the Lannisters and the Tyrells in battle. And now we will chase off the Greyjoys. Lord Stark, what of the gift to your uncle for the wedding? Surely Lady Catelyn wishes your presence to celebrate Lord Edmure's marriage." A stooped Free with a thin grey moustache said unctuously. Robb did not know his name, only that he had demanded and been denied a command at the Red Fork, given that the man was a poor fighter and a worse leader. "I will give my uncle a beautiful sight, Ironborn fleeing for their lives as we drive them back to their Shithole Islands. House Tully is sworn to defend the Riverlands. That will be the gift of House Stark. Harry on Carstark, you will lead the van against this scum. I will stand with the Mallisters to defend the castle. And while we hold them, the Marndalis, Mormonts and Umbers will burn their ships in the harbour. Robb said. Well said, lad. The great Jon roared. No wedding feast is better than bathing in the blood of your enemies. And who wants to share a meal with the fucking phrase? I. The food at the Twins is dreadful. Mushy peas. Beets and beans. Cold mashed turnips. How I long for a nice fat pork pie, full of carrots, onions, mushrooms and pork in gravy. Wylis Marndaly smacked his meaty lips at the tasty provender in White Harbour. You both look like you have had enough pies to eat. The small Jon japed and patted Wendell on his broad back. The Marndaly brothers rolled their eyes and the other commanders chuckled. More than the Riverlords, the northern houses had united under the Stark banner. Lord Robb, what of your brother? Will he work to defeat the Squids? Robert Glover asked. Deepwood Mott had suffered the most from the Ironborn incursions. My brother Jon is elsewhere, my lords. And he has much to do in the Riverlands, south of Harrenhal. The northern lords grumbled, clearly desirous of news on the Maester. Robb refused to disclose any details, and the meeting ended with an annoyed phrase, happy Mallisters and Northmen ready and eager for battle. Robb was still thinking over the crypt when a woman with long brown hair entered the clearing, dressed in a plain grey robe. Grey Wind trailed behind, the mighty direwolf's yellow eyes following her every step. Lady Catelyn has left the wheelhouse. She is with her brother and the Freys. Talisa said. I have no desire to speak with her. Her actions have cost me greatly. Robb said. He placed his right hand on the healer's smooth belly. Has there been any? Your mother means well, though she should have trusted you more. And I have not bled for 2 moons now. Your direwolf is quite attentive, Robb. I have seen him more than you the past se'night. Talisa chided him gently. I wanted Grey Wind to guard you, my lady. The direwolf nudged her belly, eliciting a rub on the ears from Talisa. Robb, I overheard some of the Rivermen speaking. They wonder where Jon Snow is and say that you might have quarrelled with your brother and sister. Do you believe that? Talisa shook her head. Of course not. All 3 direwolves are here, although Nymeria and Ghost lurk in the shadows. If you quarrelled with Arya or Jon, their wolves would not guard you. Robb loved her simple common sense. The direwolves echoed their bondmates. Ghost was silent and wise while Nymeria was an out-of-control hellion. Jon and Arya are south. They went to King's Landing on your orders. Asoma Talisa said. Are you worried? Hardly my orders, but yes, they went to the capital. What do you know about Torrhen Stark, the last king of the north? Robb said. The king who knelt. Even in Essos, everyone knows the story of Aegon's conquest. After the dragons burned thousands on the field of fire, who would dare resist? Talisa said. The story is more complicated than that. Torrhen Stark had a bastard half-brother. Brandon Snow had more of the north in him than many true-born Starks. When the northern army camped at the Trident, Brandon Snow offered to cross the river and kill Aegon's dragons while they slept. Robb said. But surely he would not have succeeded. Balerion the Black Dread was the greatest dragon that ever flew over West Eos. Talisa said. Old Nan claimed that Brandon Snow had the green sight, and could dream of the future, even things that would never come to pass. He sliced 3 branches of the Weirwood Heart Tree, and shaped them into arrows, 1 for each of Aegon's dragons. Robb said. And then what? Torrhen Stark refused his brother. He feared Brandon would slay 1 dragon, but not all 3. Then the Targaryens might have burned the north in revenge and turned Winterfell into a funeral pyre. Instead, Torrhen sent Brandon and 3 Maesters to negotiate terms of surrender. The next day, Torrhen knelt and was named Warden of the North. Brandon Snow chose exile to Essos and founded the Company of the Rose with other northerners who refused to bend the knee. Torrhen never saw his half-brother again. An interesting story, Robb, but how does it relate to you? Jon is my Brandon Snow. But I will not bend the knee to a false pretender. Jon crossed into the enemy camp and he will strike a blow for House Stark. Does he plan to kill the Lannisters? Jon means to rescue Sansa. But he will kill anyone he needs to get her and Arya out alive. I will not break with my brother. If he falls, I will avenge him. He would do the same for me. Robb spoke with the certainty of absolute truth. The pack was eternally loyal. Tyrion kicked off the ridiculous black and gold thigh-high boots, nearly hitting Podrick Payne in the face. That morning, the testy old cobbler, who claimed to be the most skilled in all of the Crown lands, swore the expensive footwear would add 4 inches to his height. That it did, through a high heel that needed to be countered by toes that bent upward into a fine point, lest he fall flat on his face. The gold coulaines were extravagantly long, as befitting a Lannister, and extended 3 inches high, almost matching the heels. The shoes match your doublet. If it raises your height, it is worth the discomfort. Jaime offered. His brother wore crimson and black, with the roaring lion of House Lannister embroidered in gold thread. At the wedding, Jaime would don white armor and white cloak as Lord Commander of the Kingsguard. I don't care that it pinches my feet. It's more that I look like a fool. If I wore a cap and bells, people would mistake me for Moon Boy. Tyrion complained. No, they wouldn't. Moon Boy is a lot taller. Better looking too. Bronn said. Don't you have something better to do? Like ensure my security? Tyrion said. I don't see how that is possible. Bronn said. An army of servants had invaded the Tower of the Hand intent on cooking, cleaning, dusting, and delivering casks of wine, barrels of beer, pipes of cider, and giant tuns of ale, large enough to enclose a standing man. Nevertheless, you need to appear busy today. A man's reputation suffers when his personal sword lounges about, like Mace Tyrell in front of a smoked ham. Tyrion said. The sellsword grinned and left to grab a tankard of brown ale from a wench. Tyrion looked on with envy. I tried to convince father to make your wedding a smaller affair. That it would suit both you and Sansa. Jaime spoke with a hurry. But he didn't listen to a single word you said. He said this would be a lesson for his wayward son, to teach him humility. Tyrion smirked. Jaime could only nod helplessly. Conversations with Tywin Lannister were always predictable. I wonder how our Lord Father missed his childhood lessons on how to be humble. He probably ordered the Maester or Septa flogged. Tyrion made the universal hand gesture of his need for a stiff drink. Podrick Payne gulped but busied himself with polishing the chain of rubies and golden lion heads. Tyrion sighed. He had told the squire last night that under no circumstances to give him wine before the wedding. Unfortunately, Pod was too loyal to disobey orders. What does it look like out in the courtyards? Has the parade of whores arrived? Jaime shook his head. It is still early, but the talk among the guards is that Baelish is paying a silver stag for any prostitute willing to hiss and boo when you walk out of the September. A silver stag. Every brothel worker in Flea Bottom will rush the castle to mourn my nuptials. The city will go begging for whores. Even my cock cannot service so many. Only well-dressed ladies of the evening will be allowed. No slatterns can pass the gates. Joffrey has given orders to the castle. Prepare yourself and Sansa Stark. The crowd will be large. Jaime said. Lady Sansa has not spoken to me for days. She spends all her time looking out the window at the river or sowing a dire wolf. And as for the crowd, all my life, I have suffered their scorn. Today, I merely need to do it without wine. At least not until dinner. My first marriage brought me a few weeks of happiness. Tonight, the only hope is Abergold. I intend to get so dead drunk that even the mouths of a dozen whores could not wake me. Tyrion said. At Château's, the sand snakes donned the loose, layered robes of satin and silk designed for the hot dry Dornish sun. The clothes revealed a great deal of skin, a glimpse of a side breast, a slit showing an olive-colored thigh, and a low-cut neckline that displayed both substantial cleavage and even more of their strong smooth backs. They wore copper and gold, Oberá a belt of copper suns, Nymeria a cream and copper silk cape and tie and 2 ornate snake bracelets with copper and gold scales. The exception was the fourth daughter, Sarala Sand, who struggled to fit into a gown of flowing white samite, cinched with a beaded belt. To be fair, that dress belonged to Aelioa, who was 2 years younger and slimmer in the hips. I can cut a deeper slit to let you move more easily. Yair said, kneeling down to fix the gun. The slit is almost at my waist. It has been 3 years since I wore anything but breeches and tunic. Sarala said. A sheathed knife, tied to a thigh belt, peeked out from the left leg. I can go with you. The young whore said hopefully. No, Yair. It is going to be dangerous when things begin. Sweeterling, I would be happier if you were safe. Sarala replied kindly. The young whore nodded and left. Obara snorted. How do we know if anything will happen? Snow claims he can perform miracles. Is he a sorcerer? And if he could arm father, why can't he bring a second spear? The big broad women bristled, looking less like a lady than a beefy warrior itching for a fight. Before Sarala could respond, Tyen interjected. Obara, you are only angry because you have no weapon. Now, if you used daggers, that would be different. Even dressed for a wedding, both Nym and Tyen carried half a dozen blades under their flowing clothes. I still don't see how it is possible. A short sword can be hidden. Even a whip. But a long spear. Obara exclaimed. Oberyn Martell entered the room in a long yellow caftan, embroidered with 2 lines of blazing starburst suns. Under the robe, he wore a few bits of armor, copper vambraces, leather greaves, and a thin linen gamison. None of the pieces offered much protection, but the Red Viper planned to rely on speed and surprise. Your sister is right. A wedding chapel is not a butchery. Only the guards will have weapons. Did this Maester truly say he could bring me a spear in the September? Yes, father. A spear. 8 feet long. A blade the length of 2 feet and 4 inches at its widest. Jon Snow has given his word. Sarala said. Oberyn laughed. I like him more and more. But how will he do it? I do not know. She shrugged. The Prince of Dawn turned to his daughters. You all look beautiful. Lovely and deadly. But there is something more you need to know. Something about my sister, Elia. The Sand Snakes waited for their sire to continue. The gates of King's Landing were sealed against the Lannister army. Aerys planned to hunker down in the Red Keep, forcing them to siege the city. Pycelle convinced Aerys to open the gates, in the hope that Tywin would take the Iron Throne. He knew that would mean the death of Elia's children. Then Pycelle dies today. Nym said coolly. The sun had passed through the highest point and was slowly descending in the sky. Outside the pale red stone walls, a festive spirit filled the streets and alleys that fed into the King's Way. Singers bellowed out wedding songs, the Queen took off her sandal, the King took off his crown and flowers of spring, trying and failing to be heard over the loud outcry of rude pushcart peddlers. Small folk lined the paths about the castle, hoping to glimpse high-born maidens, gallant knights, and beautiful whores. Men and women chattered about the imp and his astonishing feats of sexual perversity. Wives wondered how such a small man could have such a large appetite. Soldiers bragged about their own conquests and compared their cocks to the demon monkey of Casterly Rock. Many swore they had seen the imp bring a honeycomb and jackass to a brothel. How he employed such strange objects for his pleasure, no one could guess, just as they paid no attention to the little birds darting around. 4 boys gathered in the shadow of a bronze gate near a sealed postern. They were dressed somewhere between a squire and a servant and pushed carts laden with food and drink with purpose and confidence. The 4 waited for their master, who would find them here, an hour after the sundial showed no shadow. A holy man wearing a cloth of silver vestment about his shoulders and long white robes approached. Sunlight reflected off the 7 sides of the stately crystal coronet on the head, and hints of blue and green flickered above the gold rim. Like most of the high clergy, the robes billowed as if hiding a large belly. In this case, the protrusion was a satchel strapped to the front that contained a crossbow, wildfire and robe. Your Holiness. The 4 boys puckishly bowed. Jon Snow removed the itchy coronet crown and wiped beads of sweat off his cropped hair. Only the High Septon is called His Holiness and his coronal is much finer. Each of those crystals are over a foot high. My title is simply Septon. Begging pardon, Septon, but the High Sparrow wishes to sell all the gold, crystal and silver in the September. So he wouldn't wear any crown higher than yours. Clydas laughed. And he wouldn't have this. Chet reached below his cart to get out a long staff, shaped like a shepherd's crook. The crozier was wider than most, for good reason, and the Wintertown boys had etched marks of the faith of the seven on the bent head. John admired the stout crook in his hand. A fine piece of work. You have done well. The top appeared to be ivory jointed with copper strips but was really cheap painted wood. The shaft though was sturdy ash. We sharpened the end and added iron to the bottom. Chet pointed with pride to the butt spike. The spike improved the balance and could even stab a trapped foe. John held the crozier in his left hand and strapped the holy water sprinkler to his right. The silver ball was above the belt, allowing the stored liquid to ooze into the hollow handle. We don't have much time. In less than 2 hours, the wedding will begin and end. One of you should be near the Royal September. The rest in the courtyards below. What of Varys' birds? My lord, we recruited the little birds this morning. We handed out copper stars, more coins to attract the whores, and promised even silver stags to find us in the castle. They were shocked at their good luck. Denise said. And were they suspicious? Will any run to find Varys? They were, my lord. But they were also very hungry. We could offer far more than the spider. Hot bread and cheese. Eggs. Fried sausages. Candied plums. Copper stars. We promised more if they obeyed. Shane said. Good. It helps that the spider is busy watching the Tyrells and Martells at the castle. Which septon comes to the Red Keep? John said. The High Sparrow nearly refused, but the most devout sent septon Lucian. He is a son of Walder Free. A greedy fat man. Clydas said. What does he look like? John asked. Like any Free. A mix between a rat, a weasel and a vulture. But most septons are very fat. Lucian is no exception. He is also older than you, my lord. Clydas said. Luckily, this ridiculous crown covers my hair and the top of my head. I will need to puff my cheeks out like a squirrel. Now the most critical part. Do you have the cloaks? The four nodded. Hidden in each cart were dozens of cloaks and veils. John inspected them. The wool garments were winter grey on ice white. Stark colors. These were the colors that Sansa would wear in the Royal September. The hardest part was the waiting. John had hugged her and wished her good luck hours ago, leaving her with Balerion. The old black cat was not good company, not like a dire wolf. In another life, she could spend days playing with Nymeria in the Godswood. Arya waited in the dark, in the small round chamber where 6 tunnels met, each with their own door and iron gate. She chose not to light the ornate iron brazier, in the shape of a dragon's head. On the floor, Arya placed a pile of pebbles to mark the trail that only she would know. She could wander in the dark. But the stones would guide Sansa and the others. Arya could destroy any trace as they passed. There would be no clues left for little birds. Balerion hissed, and jumped on the rungs set on the walls. Arya followed, counting the number of steps. The ascent was long and hard and she groped for each rung, although the dim outline of the Black Tom led the way. Her arms hurt, but with every step, her footing became more sure. Quiet as a shadow. Quick as a snake. Calm as still water. Finally, when the count reached 230, she crawled through the short tunnel to the left, pulled an iron hook, and entered the bedchamber of the Hand. Servants roamed the Tower of the Hand, preparing for the banquet. Dressed in the red and gold brigandine, Arya looked like a Lannister page. She would have told a maid that she needed a veil from Lady Sansa's chamber, but the Black Tom sniffed and scurried down a long hall. Arya heard soft sobbing. A skinny dark-haired girl wept, her hands covering a thin face. Jane Poole. Arya put a finger to her mouth, signaling for quiet. Please, please, sir. Don't hurt me. The girl shrank back in fear, her eyes on the floor. Jane, stop that. Arya, she whispered. Is that really you? How can that be? We need to leave, now. Get whatever things you have. The girl's eyes turned fearful. Arya, I can't. They hurt me, many times. You don't know what they did to me, how they... Arya put up her hand. Stop. I know you have suffered terrible things. But are you going to let them abuse you? Or are you going to strike back? But I am not brave. I am not a Stark, like you, a tearful Jane said. My father said that we can only be brave when we are afraid. Do you want to save Sansa? Jane nodded. With all my heart. Good. We are getting out of here. But first, we need to get my sister. Promise me that you will do what I say and follow my orders. We need to fight for Sansa. But what do I have to do? You need a gun. And then a cloak. We are going to attend the wedding. But you are not Jane Poole. You are Lady Eliza from the Crown Lands, and I am Ari, your page. Don't look sad or fearful. Stand straight and tall. You are the daughter of a powerful house. I need a moment to wash my hair and face. I can wear Sansa's purple dress, and blue cloak to cover my hair. She hurried to a basin of water. Arya knew Jane would be wearing another cloak soon. But that could wait until they exited the tower. From her satchel, she took out a vial and began to splash the green liquid over hangings, rugs, and in the dark spaces near the windows. The Black Tom hissed his approval. They made it up the serpentine steps, her red and gold doublet assigned to gold cloaks and castle guards of her faux allegiance to House Lannister. Jane stood straight and followed in Arya's footsteps. Her movement was wooden, but the girl did not cower. Arya found the cart in the shadow of the Royal September. For a moment, she did not recognize the pretty dark-skinned lady near Chet. But then the big black eyes crinkled and the Sphinx smiled. Ari. How nice to see you again. And who is this? Alras said. Lady Eliza. Has everything gone to plan? Arya said. Chet nodded. He took out a cloak and veil of grey and white. All that was missing was the running direwolf of House Stark. Better make it two. Alras said. She wrapped the grey and white cloak about the shoulders of her white dress, and the demi-veil hid her dark brown hair. A perceptive observer saw the teak skin and the dark eyes, but a quick glance revealed only a lady dressed in stark colors. Lady Eliza, allow me. Chet gently placed the cloak on Jane's shoulders. The white veil covered the hair. From a distance, a viewer could not tell her apart from Alras or Sansa Stark or the other ladies who also sported white and grey cloaks. How many? Arya said. Half a dozen above the steps. The others have been much busier in the courtyard below. Chet handed her a large long package, wrapped with hempen rope about plain wool. I will go find more of the little birds and hand out more cloaks and veils. We have been giving out 3 silver stags with every cloak, 2 for the whore, 1 for the little bird. I will take care of Lady Eliza. Alras drawled. Arya nodded, both hands gingerly holding the package. She strode confidently to the September. At Winterfell, the September was a small chamber for Lady Mother to pray. Here each statue was huge with a censer at the base, burning sweet incense. There were 7 statues but only 6 faces. The stranger was turned away from the others, hidden in darkness. Besides the god of death, the chamber was bathed in light, sunlight from the windows, the flames of a brazier hanging down in the center, and candles lit around the statues. The light scintillated against many 7-sided crystals that decorated the room. Guards hung back while the nobles sat in silence, waiting for the septon to arrive between the altars of the father and the mother. Arya spared no glance for the imp fidgeting next to his white-cloaked brother or her sister, alone among a bunch of unsmiling septars. She found the Martells easily enough, with their revealing yellow and orange silk gowns. Many eyes rested on the tall, slender man and his half-dressed paramour. Instead, she sought out the 3 sand snakes, and gave the package to the golden-haired girl in lace and samite. Arya whispered for Elia and hurried away. Brian stood awkwardly, ignored by nobles, septars, and guards alike. The heavily scarred man watched Sansa, and to his right, a large warrior with a hook nose and bushy brown hair japed with several Lannister men. That one wore a fine surcoat with a black kettle on a red field over white plate armor and carried a white helm on a leather belt with golden buckles. Arya tapped Brian on the side. Her mouth gaped in shock, but Arya pointed to the corner, where the carved head of Baelor the Blessed watched over an ornate wooden door. Arya pushed her way through. The royal confessional was nearly as large as the Winterfell September. A screen inlaid with prayers to the father separated a chair and a comfortable bench covered in black satin, long enough for a grown man to lie down. A thin patina of dust covered the candles. Arya, what are you doing here? A gobsmacked Brian asked. Rescuing Sansa. Sit down. Arya quickly closed the door, and lit one candle. The Septon's chair was illuminated but the bench remained partly in shadow. Strip. Lady Stark. But. Brian's confusion was clear. We don't have much time. Take off your armor. I will be back soon. Arya said. She closed the door quietly when she left. The Lannister guards had taken their positions near the lions. The scarred man had eyes only for Sansa. Arya coughed respectfully, and then the knight with the black kettle turned. Sir, I have a message for you from... Speak up, boy. From who? Kettle Black asked. A lady, sir. A blushing maid with yellow hair and fair skin. She wishes to give you her favor, and possibly more. Arya said. The brown-haired man gave a lopsided grin. Lead on, boy. I will be happy to meet your lady. Arya opened the door to the confession. She heard a gasp but Brian's face could not be seen in the darkness. The Maid of Tarth had stripped down to only her gamison, and moved two beefy hands to cover herself. Osmond leaned in eagerly, only to reel when he saw the crooked teeth, short blonde hair, and broad freckled face. As he backed away, Arya plunged needle cleanly through the knight's right eye. She buried 6 inches of the blade into the head, twisted the rapier, and then braced both hands against the falling body. Kettle Black's legs collapsed and he fell to the side, blood pooling on the ground. There was no blood on the white cloak. Arya. You killed him. Brian squeaked, her modesty forgotten at the sight of the dead man. He is wearing a white cloak. Was he a Kingsguard? Sir Osmond bragged that the Queen wanted him to guard her body. If there was any opening, he would be anointed as a Kingsguard. So that's why he has a white cloak but no white armor. Help me take off his things. Arya said. Brian moved to unbuckle the backplate of the cuirass. Arya handed her the great helm, and stripped off the surcoat. Most of the blood was on the face and neck. When you walk out, you are Sir Osmond Kettle Black. Wear his surcoat, armor, cloak. Keep your head covered with the helmet. Be ready to rush for the door. Arya said. With the surcoat and cloak, I only need a few pieces of Kettle Black's armor. How will I know when to run? Brian said. Simple. Just watch the wedding. Arya stripped the dead man of everything they needed. Jon knelt before the altar of the father, his head bowed and hidden. He gave thanks to the statues of the 7. Infiltrating the Red Keep had been easy. No one challenged a Septon wearing cloth of silver vestments. He found Lucian free, and informed him of a private message from the High Sparrow. In a small sacristy, Jon knocked free out with a vicious clout of the staff. He dragged the body behind some hangings and locked the room. He kept his eyes low, but glanced about the room. Arya had returned from the confessional, a giant knight trailing her. In the front pews, the royal family sat in crimson and gold. The left was full of Tyrells, and the right the Martells, as far from Tywine as protocol allowed. Several warriors hovered around the old lion, including the monster that Jon had last seen fleeing at the Trident. Jaime walked down the steps, leaving a nervous Tyrion. Then Joffrey jabbered into Sansa's ear as he walked her up the aisle. Jon slashed the pouch of wildfire, and green began to drip on the ground. Jon faced the crowd, with the staff in his left hand. Sansa kept any sign of grief or fear from her pale drawn face. Her silver dress was hidden under the grey and white cloak. Her escort wore a crown of gold antlers, encrusted with rubies and black diamonds. It was either too large for his head, or his neck tilted to the left. A smirking Joffrey left Sansa at the bottom of the steps, and returned to his seat. Tyrion offered his hands to Sansa as she walked up to the altar. She refused, looking at the ground. The dwarf grimaced slightly and reached for a giant wedding cloak of crimson velvet worked with lions and bordered with gold, satin and rubies. Jon slammed the iron butt of the staff on the ground, and the eyes in the room turned to him. Sansa's mouth gaped in shock. We are gathered here today before the father and mother. The 7-pointed star teaches that the father grants justice and the mother offers mercy. But there has been little justice or mercy in King's Landing. None for Ned Stark. None for Elia Martell. none for Aegon or Rhaenys Targaryen. All four were murdered by the Iron Throne. Stunned murmurs were interrupted by King Joffrey's screech. Ned Stark was a traitor. A false confession to a false king. You are the son of Cersei and Jaime Lannister. You have no right to any crown. Jon retorted. He leaned the staff against the table and grabbed the holy water sprinkler with his right hand and lifted a burning candle in the left. Knights and guards drew their swords and rushed for the altar. Gold cloaks, white cloaks, and red cloaks surged forward. How dare you utter such lies? I will have your head, an outraged Tywin Lannister thundered. You have tried before. The Starks send their regards. Jon said. Jon swung the holy water sprinkler back and forth, and sheets of bright green liquid rained down from the unsealed holes onto the oncoming soldiers. No one knew why until Jon held the candle high and blew the flame into the sprays of wildfire. Jets of dark emerald flames gushed out and guards screamed as armor and skin caught fire. Burning men ran into the horrified crowd as the September descended into chaos and noise. Jon threw the candle behind him, igniting a trail of liquid to the statues. He dropped the now empty holy water sprinkler and retrieved a clay jar from his pouch, and tossed it high into the burning brazier, hanging at the center of the room. The jar landed and immediately exploded, bathing the September in an eerie green light, as shards of clay, glass, and hot metal rained down. Run, he said to Sansa. Jon ripped off the robes and tossed them in the direction of the Lannisters. Green liquid spewed from the pouch and more fires ignited in the pews. As they rushed down the center of the aisle, Jon threw the crozier at the feet of Oberyn Martell. Jon and Sansa joined the exodus with Arya, Brian and Owen not far behind. Bystanders gawked at the smoldering green flames in the royal September. Jon and his sisters disappeared into the crowd. Tyrion peered warily from under the altar table. The flames still burned hazily, and the September was bathed in green, but the chamber slowly regained a semblance of order. He checked once again his doublet, trousers, belt and boots and thanked the gods his clothes were not drenched. Tyrion. Jaime hurled the table to the side. The white armor was streaked with soot, and the white cloak half burned, but his brother had escaped unscathed. Perhaps the gods wish me to stay a bachelor. Tyrion quipped to an unamused crowd. Bronn and Pod had helped Jaime in the search. That was Snow. How in the seven hells did he get wildfire? Bronn said. An excellent question. Could the pyromancers be playing both sides? Hollin and his acolytes were more pompous than duplicitous. Still, everyone was susceptible to gold. A horrible thought struck Tyrion. What if Snow, as a skilled maester, discovered the recipe for wildfire? I am glad you are unharmed. Jaime said. A dozen guards died, and more suffered injuries. What about our family? Or the other nobles? Tyrion asked. Jaime responded by leading the way to a large group of Tyrells, Martells and Lannisters surrounded by guards and toadies. No one was missing. Lord Tywin's pale green eyes glittered with anger and rage. Tyrion had never seen his father so close to losing control. Are all Lannister weddings so full of excitement? Compared to this, Margaery's wedding will be a dull affair, the Queen of Thorns said. It was quite a show. I might be wrong, but a wedding ends in a bedding, not a runaway bride. Luckily, I have a keepsake, the Red Viper smirked as he held the Septon's staff. We will drag Sansa Stark back to the altar. And her bastard brother will beg for the stranger's kiss before his head lands on a spike. Cersei said. They cannot escape, your grace. Gold cloaks guard the steps. We will find them. Trant said. Why did we have no idea Jon Snow was in King's Landing? Tywin asked. My lord, I investigated other potential threats. I saw no trace of Jon Snow. Varys said. How could he have gotten wildfire? Tywin said. Does he have wildfire? The Red Viper asked rhetorically. He only threw one jar, and had some more liquid stored in that mace. The Prince of Dawn is correct. With more wildfire, Snow could have burned down the entire September. Perhaps the alchemists only sold him a few vials. Pycelle said. That is not the only possible explanation. Tyrion said. He may have more but simply chose not to use it. Why would he only have a few vials? I want the bastard's head. Joffrey yelled. I want him tortured and torn from limb to limb before he dies. A large vein bulged on his nephew's forehead. Enough. First we need to find him. Tywin Lannister led the way to the doors of the September. The yard overflowed with hundreds and hundreds of men and women in motion. Some watched the September, others pushed against the gold cloaks, and even more swirled about chaotically like currents in an eddy. Tyrion saw a lady covered in stark grey and white, and then another, and then another. At least a dozen women wore colours akin to Sansa Stark's maiden cloak. One of them was his former Horshay, wearing a purple dress underneath. What the? Jaime asked. All the highborn nobles looked about the mass of people, straining to find Sansa Stark. The trouble was that they saw too many of them, and most were moving in the crowd. The white and grey cloaks stood out in a sea of colour. Oh, well played, Jon Snow. Well played. Varys giggled. His lord father turned, his face cold and furious. Did you tell him? Tell who? Tyrion responded. Snow. You allowed Sansa Stark to wear a cloak of grey and white. Somehow, Snow managed to sneak those cloaks here in the Red Keep. Tywin said. No. Tyrion's denial was equally forceful. You allowed whores to come to my wedding to humiliate me. One of them is wearing a Stark cloak. Are the other ones wearing grey and white also whores? Because if so, the fault belongs to the man who brought them to the castle. Tywin glared at a squirming Baelish. My lord, I had no idea of this. I only asked for a few ladies who had known Tyrion well. Tyrion sought the pleasure of paid women, but he had not fucked a dozen women since his arrival at King's Landing. Where had the whores come from? The loud shrill yell came from the crowd. Look, Lady Sansa. A woman in a white gown wearing a white and grey cloak and veil dashed for the White Sword Tower. 1,000 golden dragons for Sansa Stark's capture. The cry echoed through the castle. The crowd parted ways as hundreds of warriors gave chase. Stop, Jaime. Tyrion hissed, pulling on the remnants of his brother's cloak. Tyrion, as commander of the Kingsguard, my duty is to capture the girl. Jaime said. This doesn't make sense. Think, Jaime. Who would pay 1,000 dragons for Sansa Stark? Father would. Or the Iron Throne. Or even you. Jaime's eyes widened in realization. White Sword Tower lay a few hundred paces from the Royal September. A mass of guards had rushed over, certain that the girl could be tracked easily in the conical structure. After all, the tower was at the corner of the Red Keep, and housed only 7 apartments, 6 of them sparse sleeping cells. A horde of armored men led by Meryn Trant reached the tower. Tyrion did not see the crossbow, only the flaming bolt that shot out from the shadows. A wooden cask, bound in iron, rested at the bottom of the winding steps. The bolt hit the barrel and the barrel exploded into a raging green inferno. Dozens of men were hurled into the air like some hungry giant had plucked them into the sky, and bits of pieces of scorched armor with blackened body parts rained down. A flaming green demon rose, its head nearly the height of the 4-story tower, with tendrils that reached out to kiss the once eager men. They died so quickly that there was no time to scream. Instead, the crowd shrieked in fear and ran in a mad dash for the steps, overwhelming the few remaining gold cloaks not gawking at the dead. Even hundreds of feet away, the heat was horrid. The demon appeared to bow, and Tyrion thought for a brief moment that the carnage was over. Then he heard a short sharp hiss, like air being sucked through a tube, and a deafening roar went up. A cloud of dark emerald rose up behind the demon, and the windows of the tower shattered into broken glass and charred stone. The upper walls tottered and fell, like a stumbling greybeard wreathed in a cloak of jade. The crash shook the entire keep, and a cloud of superheated dust and smoke blew over the September. Patches of wildfire littered the ground, and the stench of burnt flesh overwhelmed his nostrils, despite many of the dead being covered by rubble. All that remained was a broken stub of molten slag where white stone had once stood. White Sword Tower was gone. Well, that settles it. Jon Snow does have wildfire. And quite a bit of it. The Red Viper chuckled. The Winter Town crew had done well. Below the steps Jon counted at least 3 dozen wearing a white and grey cloak. That did not include the smiling sand snake. Alras looked properly Dornish with orange and red over her hidden white gown. The Sphinx had raced to White Sword Tower and discarded her cloak there, after ducking into the shadows. They were all gathered now, even the stunned Brian, ready to go. "Good work, Alras. But now we have to hurry," John said. He took the hand of the girl standing to his right, her face. "Brian, take her out of the castle. She knows where to go. There are 2 horses stabled outside, my lady, at the corner before the hook. The alley leads to River Row, and from there, ride along the castle walls to the docks," Clydas said. "But won't the gates be watched?" Brian asked. "Of course they will. And if you were Brian, you might be stopped. But you are Sir Osmond Kettleblack with a white cloak, escorting a highborn lady back to her mansion," John said. "We will escort you out the gates, Lady Brian," Clydas said. "Clydas, Denise, and Shane, seek out the little birds and bring them to the ships. They should know you from this morning," John said. "Milord, what if they don't come? We have silver stags and candied plums." "But what if they run back to Varys?" Denise said. "Do the best you can. These are hungry children. If we can free them from the spider's web, we should. Better to save some than none." Sansa Stark watched in stunned silence as Brian walked off with Jane Poole, shadowed by the Wintertown boys. She raised her white and grey veil, only to be stopped by John. "Sansa, don't show your face outside. Arya knows the escape route. Chet, go with them." "What about us?" Owen asked. "Snow, Dawn wants blood. The Mountain or Tywin Lannister," Alras said. "Lord Tywin will be surrounded by many men. But the Mountain, if you can get him alone. I will take Owen and distract the Lannisters. Use that time to set a trap for the Mountain. The best bait would be Sansa Stark." "Where are they going?" Alras asked pointedly. "The Tower of the Hand," John said. "Then I will join them. Don't worry, your sisters will be gone before the Mountain comes." "Very well." John handed Alras 5 jars of wildfire. "Half of what I have left. A kiss, Snow, before parting." Alras lifted her head and their lips locked for a long moment. "I would kiss you too, Snow, but you are not leaving me," Owen quipped. "Enough of that, Owen. Goodbye sisters." "Good luck, Alras," John said, as they parted. Tyrion wondered why the 7 kingdoms were cursed with idiots for kings. Robert Baratheon was a piss-poor ruler but had never shown fear. After the tower's destruction, Joffrey demanded that his personal safety be the top priority. Worrying about survival in the face of a wildfire explosion was sensible. Revealing that fear by cowering was not. Particularly when Joffrey ignored Margaery and ordered around the Lannisters. "Where are my guards? Why are they not here, protecting me?" Joffrey yelled. "Everyone near the tower is dead. Trant, Moore and Blount were next to the cask when it exploded. The only white cloaks alive are Jaime, Sir Loras, or Dorne," Tyrion said. "What about the Hound? He can guard me, and not the wolf bitch." Jaime answered first. Sandor Clegane ran out of the doors. "My dog abandoned his post. I will have his head." Joffrey ranted. "Your Grace, Clegane does not like fires. Not since he was burnt as a boy." Jaime eyed the Mountain with disgust. "Perhaps you should retire to Maegor's Holdfast." "Will I be safe there from wildfire?" Joffrey asked. "Your Grace, Maegor's is the strongest place in the Red Keep. There is no way Jon Snow can reach you there," Varys said. "Unless he has already placed wildfire in the Holdfast and is waiting to spring a trap," Oberyn said. "After all, members of the royal family have died in Maegor's before. It is not possible to sneak into Maegor's Holdfast, Prince Oberyn," Varys said. "Did you think it was possible for Sansa Stark to be rescued at her wedding?" Oberyn retorted. "The king will return to Maegor's." Tywin dismissed Joffrey. "Pycelle, locate the pyromancer Horlin. Find out how Snow might have procured the wildfire." "As you wish, my lord." The Grand Maester left for the rookery. They descended to the lower castle, the guards testing the steps before nobles crossed. Near the September, there had been a dozen women wearing grey and white. Below the steps, there were hundreds. Even worse, discarded veils and cloaks were strewn on the courtyards. The destruction of the tower had cost them precious time. "Arrest anyone wearing Stark colors," Tywin Lannister ordered. "My lord." The whores know nothing about the plot to rescue Sansa Stark. They were given garments by boys with push carts. Sir Jacelyn Bywater said. "Then why are they wearing those infernal clothes?" Tywin asked. "They were told it was to please Lord Baelish and King Joffrey, and paid 2 silver stags. The children were also paid as well," Bywater said. "Children? What children?" Tyrion asked. "Children who told the whores the throne wished them to wear grey and white. They brought the women to the carts. Street urchins, my lord Hand. They have all disappeared. I want every inch of the Red Keep searched. The whores will shed their cloaks. Anyone wearing Stark colors will be tied to a post and flogged," Tywin said. Just then, a vial fell from the sky, and smashed 20 feet away, bursting in a noxious flame. Another jar shattered against the red walls, staining the stones green, before the wildfire ignited. Panicked guards scattered and small folk screamed in terror. "Snow is still in the castle," Jaime said. "He must be throwing wildfire from a tower window." "But which one?" From the courtyard, a dozen towers could be seen. Drum towers, corner forts, barracks, the small council chambers, the holdfast, the Tower of the Hand. "We will have to search them one by one, starting with the closest building. Sir Loras, come with me." Jaime unsheathed his sword. "If you want to get yourself killed, Kingslayer, go right ahead. But leave my grandson out of it," the Queen of Thorns said firmly. "But we have to find Snow. He is our best hope of recovering Sansa Stark," Jaime said. "He will pour a bucket of wildfire on your head and throw you a torch. Or shoot you with a crossbow. Probably both. Don't be a fool." Olenna Tyrell refused to back down. "The old lady is right," Bronn said to Tyrion. "I would not chase Snow for 1,000 dragons or a dozen whores. We're lucky he didn't kill all of us in the September." Lord Tywin ended the discussion. "Clegane. Find Jon Snow. Kill him." "What about the girl?" the brute asked. "Bring her back alive. Kill anyone who tries to stop you." Oberyn Martell waited until the Lannisters and their Tyrell lackeys left the Royal September. Joffrey had already departed with Cersei and Tommen. Oberyn's hands gripped the sturdy ash of the crozier. With a simple twist, the hook snapped off, leaving a 6-foot shaft. The top was tapered 3 inches and smoothed into a smaller sanded circle. He took the package from Tywin. They unwrapped the rope, revealing a well-crafted steel blade, 2 feet long. Nymeria and Tywin admired the sharp edges and point. The Red Viper's eyes went lower and he whistled. "Jon Snow may have only 16 name days, but he deserves a steel link," Oberyn said, examining the head. "The socket is chamfered to round the bottom edges. This is well made." Oberyn swiftly mounted the spear blade. He deftly turned the head on the pole, until the parts joined into one whole. He bound the blade and the shaft with rope, and then took out a tiny veil and dripped black venom onto the blade. "Father, I found this rat." Oberyn Martell dragged back Pycelle by his scrawny wattled neck. Her left hand was clamped over the mouth and the snowy beard. She hurled him to the floor. The Grand Maester begged for mercy. "Please, don't hurt me. I have done nothing wrong. You helped kill my sister and her children," Oberyn said. "It wasn't me. It was Lorque and Sir Gregor." Pycelle babbled. "All I did for the realm. You did it for the Lannisters. What did Tywin have on you? Did he pay you gold, women?" Oberyn took hold of the bejeweled Maester's chain, a heavy thick rope of 24 links, from cheap tin to white platinum. He twisted the chain, until Pycelle's face purpled. The Maester lost control of his body in death, staining the red velvet and ermine robe with shit and piss. The Red Viper tossed away the dead man, and took up the spear. Ellaria touched his left arm. "Oberyn, my love. Are you certain you want to fight the Mountain?" "Fight him. I am going to kill him. Manticore venom is deadly, and the moment it reaches his heart, the mountain is a dead man. Oberyn replied. But he might not die, father. Tyen said. You have thickened the venom with sorcery. And the mountain is enormous. It may take him hours to die. His armor is incredibly thick. Under the plate armor, he wears chain and leather. They say he is stronger than any man alive in Westeros. Nym added. The Red Viper leaned the staff against a statue of some aspect of the Seven and took Elariah's face tenderly with both hands. It may be that I die fighting the mountain. And if that shall pass, I will miss you and my lovely sand snakes. But let me live deep while I live. Let me know the embrace of your arms, the mad clash of battle, the sweet joy of revenge. I am content with my life. And if I die, I will dance in hell or wait for you in heaven. Oberyn said. Wedding preparations at the Tower of the Hand had stopped, with frightened servants fleeing for their lives. Wild rumors spread that the White Wolf planned to burn down the entire Red Keep. Few men were brave enough to face wildfire, and none of those were sellswords. Arya ransacked the dresser, while her sister disrobed, taking off first the cloak and veil, the grey doeskin slippers, and finally the ivory samite wedding gown, leaving her only in silk small clothes behind the golden wood screen. Arya threw over a revealing bright orange robe, with a deep plunging cleavage line that slashed down to the belly. A cinched feathered belt and a copper collar completed the ensemble. Arya ripped out the needles holding together the tightly coiffed and braided hair and put in their place a cheap strip of copper. Ouch! Sansa, her locks now an unruly mass of auburn curls, looked at the garish colorful clothes with dismay. I look like a whore. Best disguise for where we are going. Hurry up. Arya said. Begging your pardon, but why does the imp have whore's clothes? Chet's face was turned toward the chamber door, his red face averted from Lady Sansa. For a whore, no doubt. Men have needs. Alras said. Sansa stepped out from behind the screen. With uncombed hair, a tight-fitting dress, and cheap trinkets, she could be mistaken for a brothel worker from the Street of Silk. You could use some rouge or perfume. Alras said. No need, not for where. Arya bit her lip, and said no more. Alras chuckled. The secret passages. I am not an idiot. How did you know? Jon didn't tell you. Arya demanded. It is no great mystery. When the Red Keep was finished, Maegor the Cruel invited the builders and craftsmen to a lavish feast. At the end of the 3 days, he killed them all. It is obvious he had something to hide. Alras said. But if the Maesters know, why are they still a secret? Arya asked. A rumor about spies in the walls is one thing. Mapping out the passages is another. Likely, the Targaryen kings used the tunnels. Why didn't Robert do anything? Well, he cared more about drinking and whoring than ruling. Alras said. Arya made her decision. I will show you the secret passage. It is a small door in the hearth. You take the tunnel to the left for a short distance and then climb down a lot of steps. Alras bowed. Thank you for your trust. Good luck, Arya and Sansa. Arya opened the hearth. Follow me, Sansa. Chet will be behind you. She went down the narrow staircase. At the bottom, on the mosaic of the dragon, 2 yellow eyes greeted them. Balerion turned and led the way west. Brian found the stable near a sign of a rack of dark antlers on green. They had gone through the gates unchallenged, a testament to both the White Cloak and the overwhelmed guards. Brian only took the great helm after they exited the castle. The Wintertown boys left soon after. Before they disappeared into the crowds of small folk, Brian saw them rounding up younger urchins. Silver flashed in the hands of the northern boys. A tow-haired stable boy brought out 2 saddled horses, a sturdy bay mare and a chestnut palfrey. Before she could retrieve a copper star from her pouch, the boy gasped and ran away. She turned to see a familiar scarred face. The hound drew his sword. Give me back Sansa Stark. Brian would not fail her oath to Lady Catelyn and House Stark. She would save Sansa or die trying. No, sir. I will not let you drag the lady back to that mockery of a wedding. The hound grunted and Brian readied her blade for battle. A frightened voice stopped them as the girl raised her veil, revealing dark hair and a skinny face. I am not Sansa Stark. Brian whirled back in shock. What? Sandor Clegane lowered his sword. Don't you even know who you are guarding? I thought that was Lady Sansa. Brian stammered. The hound's laugh was a raspy snarl. The Starks tricked you. They expected you to be captured and killed. The girl shook her head. Not true. I would give my life for Sansa. But Arya pointed out that if they found me, all I would be is a whore with a grey and white cloak. They would let us go. Arya Stark is here too. The Starks have balls of steel. What is your name, girl? Jane Poole. Clegane squinted. Poole, you are the steward's girl that Baelish had raped over and over. How dare you say such a thing to a lady? Brian cried. The hound rolled his eyes. He speaks the truth. I do not have to pretend to be a whore. Jane shivered. What do you plan to do with me, sir? I will not let you take her back to the Lannisters. Brian said. Why would I? There is no reward for Jane Poole. Where are you going, girl? Brian interposed herself between Clegane and the hesitant girl. Why should we tell you? So you can betray us to the Iron Throne. The hound spat on the ground. Even a dog gets tired of being kicked. I liked the little bird. If I know she is safe, I will let you go. Brian looked at him with shock. You wear a white cloak. You are a Kingsguard. Why would you abandon your service to King Joffrey? Joffrey is a cunt. The Lannisters are all cunts. Now maybe the Starks are too. And maybe they are not. Are the Starks cunts? The Starks are an honorable house. Brian said, ignoring the hound's crude remarks. Oh, cut the horseshit. What do you think, girl? Clegane said. Lord Stark was an honest and honorable man. His sons take after him, and Sansa has always been my good friend. Jane replied. Sandor Clegane considered her words for a moment. Well, I would rather take my chances with the Starks than listen to Joffrey rant. My horse is tied up near the city walls on the rush. I will get it and bring you back to the little bird. Lady Poole, I do not know if we can trust Clegane. He is an oath-breaker. Brian said. Oh, stop being a Nancy. I am the one breaking the oath, not you. If I go back to the Red Keep without Sansa Stark, I will be punished. If I run away from King's Landing, the Lannisters will send men to hunt me down. And if I fight Jon Snow, he will burn me alive. Seems to me better to escort you idiots wherever you are going. The hound said. Brian sighed. The mission to rescue Sansa had not gone the way of songs. The Stark girls were gone. Luring the mountain was simple, wildfire. Alras touched a lit torch to wall hangings. Flames spread from the sweet rushes on the floor to the canopied bed. Smoke covered the dressers, the screen, a chest of books, and the hearth. The fire would seal off the secret passage so that no one could follow. She walked down the floors of the tower, splashing the vials of wildfire wherever she went. In the solar, she shattered the golden-tinted round window, so that the glass fell on the bailey below. On the upper floors of the tower, green tongues of flame could be seen. There was risk of course in burning down the Tower of the Hand. For one, the fires might spread out of control. Gregor Clegane might come with a band of soldiers. Alras trusted that she could escape one man, but a dozen would be more difficult to elude. And finally, she did not know how soon her father would arrive. She continued to set fires and waited for the mountain. How did you discover these passages? Owen said in wonder. My sister Arya discovered them, when Ned Stark was Hand of the King. Jon replied. After tossing the last jars, Jon and Owen made their way to the castle's upper levels through the tunnels. They exited near the river walk. Few guards remained above the steps, as they had rushed to the yards below. They walked to the maiden vault. Do the other Reach men stay here with you? Jon asked. Mostly it is Lady Margaery and her cousins. She has many, many cousins. Owen said. Jon pointed to the group returning from the September. Look, the Tyrells are coming. When Owen turned, Jon hit him on the back of the head with the crossbow butt. He set Owen down on the ground, and checked the pulse. Owen would wake, perhaps in an hour. More than enough time. The Tyrells wore green, velvets trimmed with sable and ermine for the men, and silks and chiffons for the ladies. The entire party was decked out in the wealth of Highgarden, mantles with golden thread, jeweled flowers set in armor and brooches, and helms chased with gold. Now that Sansa Stark has escaped, we can marry her to Willers. Mace Tyrell boomed. Hush, father. You cannot say such things in the Red Keep. The girl spoke in a low voice. The old lady, walking hand in hand with the girl, only glared at Mace. We do not know whether our offer would be accepted. After her ordeal, she may simply wish to return home. Garland said. Not accept Willers. Mace turned incredulously. Willers is the heir to Highgarden, and Lady Sansa would become sister-in-law to the Queen. She would also be sister-in-law to the King. Olenna said scathingly. One of the 7-foot giants went to open the tall curved doors of the maiden vault. Jon darted from the shadows and grabbed the girl by her cloak, wrenching her from her grandmother's arm. Margaery stifled a scream when she felt the cocked tip of the crossbow part her golden brown curls and rest on her pale neck. Good to see you again, Garland. Lord Tyrell, Lady Aeleri, Sir Loras. You must be the famous Queen of Thorns. Jon Snow. We thought you ran down the steps. Garland said. I did. I came back up. Unharmed her. Or I will carve you into pieces. Loras said, drawing his sword. You cannot reach me before I shoot. Your sister would die first. Stay back, Loras. Margaery said. Olenna stepped in front of the gawking Lord Mace. You have already freed your sister. What do you want, Snow? We will shower you in gold for my granddaughter. Do you really think I care about gold? Jon backed away, using the girl as cover. I need to borrow the lady. Do nothing rash and she will be unharmed. Bastard. You won't escape with my sister. I will. Loras stopped his rant when Garland placed an arm to block his brother's advance. Snow, what do you want with Margaery? She has done nothing against House Stark. She was kind to Lady Sansa. Garland said. Kind enough to attend her wedding. I need Lady Margaery for only a short time. Do not raise the alarm for 1,000 beats. They departed, leaving the shocked Tyrells behind. They passed the kennels and stables, and turned left at the small godswood with young elm and older trees. They walked past oblivious servants, the crossbow hidden under the green cloak. Do you plan to kill me? Margaery asked, her voice surprisingly calm. No, my lady. I would prefer you unharmed. Her shoulders relaxed. Do you mean to steal me and take me north as some prize of war? Jon snickered. To marry Robb Stark. This isn't some story of Jonquil and her fool Florian. Then where are you taking me? How do you plan to escape the castle if you are going away from the steps? Margaery asked. Who said we are escaping? Jon opened the bronze and oak doors of the great hall. Alras heard loud footfalls on the floor underneath. She regretted not bringing her golden heartbow. She could core an apple at 100 paces with a 3-foot shaft. Still, no daughter of Oberyn Martell was helpless. She held a loop with her left hand and whirled the rope with her right hand. A steel dagger was tied to the end, and the rope dart reached 15 feet long. Heavy steps rang out on the staircase. The rope twirled faster and faster. Finally, when the great helm appeared, she placed the right hand on the left shoulder, and turned the other shoulder. The rope whipped about the left side and came around the right hip. The knife rushed forward, hitting Gregor Clegane hard on the chest. The blade bounced off the steel breastplate. The mountain roared in anger and rushed forward. Alras jerked the blade back and whipped the rope around the armored knees, like a billow. She pulled, and the mountain fell. Alras spun the rope quickly, smashing the knife down on the helmet. Again, the knife bounced ineffectively. The mountain rose. I am going to kill you, girl. I am going to rape you and then smash your fucking head in. Alras cursed inwardly. She could stay out of the mountain's reach, but the rope dart could not penetrate the thick armor. She ducked under the blade, and ran down the stairs. Sir Gregor Clegane followed, tramping down to the small hall. But Elrose was not alone. There were 3 other girls and a tall slender dark-haired man holding a long spear. "My name is Oberyn Martell. You killed my sister. Prepare to die." The mountain laughed at the puny opponent. As Clegane stepped forth, the man spun the spear quickly and then smashed the sharp edge against the visor. The blade did not penetrate the thick helm, but the mountain's head snapped back. Clegane warily raised the enormous shield and approached. The battle was on. "Elia Martell. Say her name." The red viper repeated as he thrust, spun and dodged. Her father circled and jabbed, forcing the big man to turn and turn again. Oberyn landed many hits, but the spear could only dent the heavy plate. The mountain responded with loud grunts and powerful swipes. Clegane was massive and surprisingly quick. Her father was more skilled at fighting. Still, if the mountain landed a blow, it might cleave the red viper in half. "Sister, the flames are coming." "Rather lovely." Tyen pointed at the green tongues of wildfire that spread down the circular staircase. "I wish I had a spear." Oberyn cursed. "I would love to stab the mountain in the back." "That's it," Elrose declared. "Daggers have no chance, but I know how we can help, father. Find a staff, or a long piece of wood." Oberyn ripped the planks out of a long trestle bench. Elrose took out the last vial of wildfire. She poured some over the steel dagger at the end of the long rope, and the rest on the ends of the wooden slats. The wildfire sparked and the weapons began to burn. Elrose spun her rope and smashed the flaming knife on a giant pauldron. Oberyn swung and slammed the makeshift staff into the broad back. But it wasn't the force or the knife that bothered the mountain. It was the fire. "Stay out of reach and burn him. Cook him alive in the armor," Elrose said. The sand snakes attacked the tiring Gregor Clegane from behind. The flames took their toll even as their sire spun his spear faster and faster, aiming for joints, gaps, and any weak spots. Elrose didn't even bother to swing. She looped the rope about the massive metal vambraces, rear braces and pauldrons, allowing the wildfire to burn. "Confess. You killed her. You raped her. Who gave the order?" "Who?" Oberyn Martell cried. Suddenly, Clegane surged forward and lashed out, barely missing her father's head. The viper smiled and rammed the spear directly against a gap between the fods protecting the waist and the tassets covering the thigh. At last, the spear broke through and the tip cut the mountain's belly. Oberyn attacked again and again, twisting the blade, thrusting the point, and slashing the edges. Cuts could be seen on the belly and thighs. As the beast howled in pain, Oberyn smashed down with her wooden club on the left elbow, jarring loose the shield. "Confess. You killed my sister. You raped her. Who gave the order?" Oberyn yelled. The mountain stood up, blood and scorch marks on his armor. With a freakish burst, he rushed out, shattering the stained glass window as he plunged several floors down over the ramparts, the massive body crashing into stone and earth with a gigantic thud. Air rushed into the small hall, and the green flames spread further along the high-vaulted ceiling. "Father, we have to get out," Elrose cried. "The wildfire is burning hotter. The mountain is as good as dead. Nothing can survive manticore venom." Tyen said serenely. "Good as dead is not dead." And the mountain never confessed. He never named Tywine. Oberyn and his daughters rushed down the flight of stairs and burst into the yard. The mountain was nowhere to be seen. The Iron Throne was a poorly constructed monstrosity. It was not just the fanged blades and barbs that jutted out the sides and the top, a crest of twisted swords hanging over the king. The steps were chipped and the entire structure tilted to the right. Even the chair was cold and hard, with sharp edges that could cut arms and legs. It was a damnably uncomfortable seat. After barring the oak and bronze doors, Jon tied Margaery's hands to a column in front of the dais. Then he went to the door behind the throne and rolled out 3 casks he stored that morning. Using a pulley, he suspended the 2 larger barrels in the air with ropes. The 3rd cask rested on the top step. Jon kicked it over to the side, and removed the bunghole. "Is that wildfire?" Margaery cried. "Yes." He descended the steps. The girl bowed her head. "How much do those barrels hold?" "I don't know, my lady." "Your Grace," Margaery said. Pardon. I am betrothed to the king. If I am to die, I would prefer to be called Your Grace. It is my title. John smiled. I promised not to harm you. I will keep my word, Your Grace. She was lost in her thoughts. I have always wanted to be queen. I guess that will never be. Why do you want to be queen? So I can help others. As queen, I can give alms to the poor, and provide for orphans and widows. I can be a patron of the arts and the citadel. You want to be the good Queen Alisanne? That won't happen. John said. Why not? The good queen was married to the old king. You are betrothed to Joffrey, who is more Maegor than Jaehaerys. Joffrey might not become another Maegor. Joffrey is a coward, a weakling, and has no dragons. But in temperament, he is like Maegor the Cruel. The war could have ended with a simple trade of prisoners. Joffrey showed his true self by beheading Ned Stark. People do not change when they become king. Cracks appeared on the oak as a ram battered the giant doors of the great hall. The wood warped and the metal bolts groaned as the steady pounding dented the frame. Finally, the thick iron-reinforced pole tore a small hole, and hands groped for an opening. Finally. It took them long enough. John said. The doors burst open. Tyrell guards, Lannister men, and the watch poured into the room. Behind Sir Loras and Sir Jaime, the other nobles could be seen. Tywine though was heavily guarded and in the rear. John waited until the knights closed the distance. Surrender, Snow! Sir Jaime yelled. Unharmed, my sister. Loras said. Stop, Loras. Margaery's voice echoed in the great hall. He has wildfire. He will kill us all. Close enough, John thought. With a knife, he cut through the ropes tied to the pulley. The two casks swung down and then arced into the air, crashing down on the black and yellow carpet. The barrels broke, splashing green liquid all over the chamber. Pools of green spilled out, covering much of the floor. John lit the torch and touched it to the Iron Throne. Wildfire had oozed out of the small cask, seeping into the iron and steel. A loud whoosh could be heard and the fire ignited, all along the spikes and edges. The Iron Throne burned, in emerald light that flickered, like a bonfire to the old gods and the new. It was an eerie sight, dancing flames kissing the steel of 100, perhaps 1,000 blades. John raised his arm again, and his intent was obvious to all. He hurled the touch to land in the spreading pool of green. Stop, Snow! You will kill us all! Tyrion shouted. His was not the only scream. John dashed away, slamming the door behind him. He left before the torch hit the ground. The torch whirled and whirled. The guards nearest ran for cover, even as Sir Loras rushed to his sister. Tyrion's boots were wet, and his doublet was drenched. There was no hope. He shut his eyes and said a prayer as he waited for the stranger. Tyrion wondered if the Septons lied and that hell would be some nameless void, without wine. He heard a faint hiss, but felt no great heat. His skin had not melted, and his hair was not on fire. Tyrion cautiously opened his eyes. The torch had landed and sputtered. He reached for the dying torch. Tyrion, be careful. It could still explode. Jaime shouted. His brother stood in front of the burning throne while the Tyrells freed Lady Margaery. I think not. Tyrion dipped a finger into the liquid. It tasted tart, crisp and earthy. My lord, do not drink wildfire. Podrick cried. This is not wildfire. This is white grape juice. Tyrion said to the astonished crowd. But the throne is on fire. Jaime said. Green flames had leaped high into the jagged nest of blades on the back of the throne and twisted metal began to bend under the heat. Snow used wildfire for the Iron Throne. But the other two casks only have grape juice. Tyrion licked his finger. Newly fermented. They grow these grapes on the Quiet Isle. Why would he do such a thing? Tywine approached. Do what? Burn down the throne. The Starks hate Joffrey. Sitting on the throne will be impossible with all the melted slag. No. Why would he go through all of this? The three casks. Barring the door. Tywine said. Simple. Snow lured us here so his sister has more time to escape. Sansa Stark is long gone from the Red Keep. Tyrion said. But where did he go? Mace Tyrell asked. There is a door behind the Iron Throne, reserved only for the king, leading to a network of tunnels. Aerys never allowed anyone to use the exit. And Baratheon never cared. Jaime said. A secret passage. Varys would know all the secret ways of the Red Keep. Wait, where is he? Tyrion said. The spider was missing. The yellow and red carriage pulled by two dappled ponies trotted down the muddy way and stopped at the edge of Fishmonger's Square, well short of the mud gate. The driver jumped down, dressed in garments more suited for a longshoreman than a coachman. Chet looked around warily and then opened the doors. Arya exited first and helped Sansa out. Shopkeepers were closing their stalls in the fish market, and carrying crates and casks to the boats in the wharves. The square was not as crowded as the morning when the herring sellers and oystermen haggled with small folk, but the sailors were noisy at all hours. Tall tales had spread of the imp's wedding, each more outrageous than the next. Arya liked the one where Sansa turned into a wolf with bat-like wings and flew out a tower window after biting Joffrey. They passed the mud gate with Chet pushing a wheelbarrow laden with cod and crabs. The Wolfwind and her sister ships, the Jolly Salt and the North Star, were docked at the wharves. Maturin Mondaly, eager and ready to sail, greeted them on top of the gangplank. Chet joined Clydas and the other boys and tended to the hungry children huddled in the holds. Arya and Sansa rested on the quarterdeck and waited. Gregor Clegane convulsed and howled in pain. It was not the impact of the fall, or the burnt flesh on his back and shoulders. The cuts from the long spear had blackened, and the wounds were oozing pus. The Mountain fled to a guardhouse and demanded a maester. When a gold cloak hesitated, Clegane smashed his face into the wall, breaking a nose and half a dozen teeth. The guardhouse emptied as the other watchman rushed to comply. The Mountain, tired of the injured man's moaning, lashed out with a steel boot until the cries stopped. "Sir!" A pimply brown-haired squire approached. The Mountain's hand shot out and grabbed the lad by the neck. "Where is the maester?" "I don't know about no maester, sir." "But I saw your brother." The chunky boy squealed. "I saw him from the castle walls. He was riding with another knight. I think they had Sansa Stark." "The Stark bitch." "Are you sure?" The Mountain squeezed harder. "Why else would the Hound leave the castle? He was guarding her the past 2 weeks." The Mountain stood up, the hatred of his brother outweighing the pain. "Saddle my horse. We are going after the girl." The Hound squinted behind them. The Tower of the Hand wore a crown of green flame. He is not alone in looking. River Row was packed full of staring fishmongers and harbour rats, jabbering and gossiping. The horses trudged slowly through throngs of small folk. "How much wildfire does Snow have?" Jane Poole only looked down at the ground. Brian answered. "I don't know. I didn't even know he was in King's Landing." "Do you know anything about the rescue?" The Hound jeered. Brian shook her head. "Then how did you get Kettle Black's cloak and coat?" "It is not my place to tell you. Ask Snow. We are following his orders." "Good. Might be we get out of this city alive." The Hound tried to push his stallion forward in the sluggish traffic. Miles behind them, the Mountain had more success parting the crowd. He smelled the perfume before he heard any footsteps. The eunuch was damnably quiet, but the fragrance was nauseating, foul and sweet, a mix of rose water and lilacs with sweat and piss. John readied his crossbow, hoping for a clean shot. But the dank gloomy cellar holding the dragon skulls offered many places to hide. "I see your shadow, Jon Snow." "Well played indeed. The whores were a nice touch. You used my own little birds to infiltrate the castle." Jon spun to the sing-song voice, only to confront a row of black teeth, higher than his chest. He dropped down behind the jaw of a long-dead dragon. The bones felt warm, but then Jon realized the heat had come from the old black tom brushing against his arm. "What do you want, Varys?" "I am in a hurry." Varys chortled, a loud sibilant sound, that covered the scrape of boots approaching. "Merely curious." "Who helped you? How did you come to the city? How many have you killed in the Red Keep?" I found the dead bodies. The Grand Maester and the Queen's kettle. Varys said. There are all sorts of odd deaths in King's Landing. How do you know I killed them? Then who did? Was it the Martells? The eunuch asked eagerly. Dead is dead. What does it matter? I am the master of whispers, Snow. My trade is secrets. Like your betrayal of Princess Elia and her children. You could have taken them from King's Landing in the passages under the castle. Alas, the passages do not lead to Maegor's Holdfast. You lie. I saw you take the tunnel from the cemetery to the Holdfast. Why didn't you save them? You made an oath to the king and the royal family. I serve the realm. Someone must. Not the king or queen, but the people. I want a land of peace and plenty. A place where the powerful do not prey on the powerless, the eunuch said. Pretty words. What have you done to make them come true? Jon said. The Black Tom padded stealthily about the dragon skulls, stalking the eunuch. More than you can imagine. My plots grow and grow, from the Red Keep to the far side of the world. One day, I will serve a ruler who lives only for the people. I doubt that. Balerion hissed and spat, and Jon dove toward the black cat, and saw the eunuch's silk slippers and the bottom of the dark grey robes. The bolt slammed into the plump belly. The eunuch lurched backwards and a Mirish crossbow clattered on the ground. Jon stood up and reloaded. The eunuch's blood dripped on the jaws of an immature dragon, perhaps Shrykos or Tessarion. Both had died in the dance. Varys moaned as he clutched his stomach. I could have helped you. I could have told you Lord Tywin's plans. I do not like people who kill or mutilate children. Jon shot again directly into the mouth, the bolt pinning the eunuch's head to the cellar's damp stone wall. Balerion hissed his approval. Arya Stark glared at the scarred burnt face, remembering Micah, the butcher's boy killed on Joffrey's orders at the Ruby Ford. Sansa asked Brian for an explanation, but the Maid of Tarth only stammered unintelligibly. Jane Poole did not speak at all. Lord Snow did not mention any other passengers. The Stark girls, Brian and Jane Poole, but no one else. Captain Marndaly refused entrance where the gangplank met the Wolf Wind. Surprisingly, the Hound made no move for his sword. I protected Sansa Stark in King's Landing. And I made sure this one got here safe. He pointed to Jane. That was Lady Brian's task, not yours, Chet said. What does that bloody matter? I didn't tell the Lannisters. I could have. The Hound snarled. Besides, I need to leave King's Landing too. The Hound has forsworn his vows to the Kingsguard. Brian added. How do we know he is not a spy? He might betray us once he gets on the ship. Arya said. He could swear an oath. That he harms no one. We could let him off at Riverrun, or the inn at the crossroads. Sansa volunteered. Clegane just broke his oath. Why won't he break another? Arya yelled. A guttural roar came from the mud gate. Sailors and whores ran as a freakishly large man in plate armor and bucket helm charged up on the docks on a brown destrier, followed by a much smaller figure riding a pony. The Hound's black stallion trotted away in a futile attempt to block the wharf, only to be swept aside by a slap of a massive gauntlet. Fuck me, it is Gregor. The Hound pushed forward, stepping onto the boat. Pull the gangplank up. And get everyone off the deck. We can't. It is tied down with ropes to the dock. The captain said in horror. Then step back. Give us space to fight. Give me a shield. We will need them. Sandor barked. Why? We just need to stop Sir Gregor from boarding the ship. Brian said. Chet scrambled and handed Sandor a round wooden shield. It barely covered the Hound's chest, leaving the lower torso open to attack. The Hound crouched down, using the shield to protect the shoulder and head. The warhorse balked at the end of the dock, but the mountain ground his spurs hard. Stung and bleeding in the flanks, the destrier galloped up the gangplank and jumped into the air. As the horse flew past, Sir Gregor slashed down and Brian barely blocked the blow. At the same instant, the Hound plunged his blade up into the belly. The horse collapsed, bloody entrails spilling onto the quarterdeck. The horse screamed, shuddered and died. The mountain stood up, with the dead stallion guarding his flanks. The hound rushed forward and the mountain struck a two-handed blow, shearing off a huge chunk of the round shield. Before the mountain could strike again, Brian was at the hound's side and staggered, while she parried another vicious swing. "Do something!" Arya shouted to Mandaeli. "Do you have any long spears?" "We're sailors, Lady Arya. Not knights. None of our blades could hope to penetrate plate armor." The hound threw away the ruined shield. Brian and the hound were two of the larger fighters that Arya had ever seen. The mountain was an entire head taller, and that head was enclosed in steel with only a narrow slit for the visor. The Clegane brothers exchanged mighty blow after blow, with Brian attempting a few thrusts before being knocked to the side by a fist. The hound was strong. The mountain was stronger. His armor was far heavier, and Arya realized it was only a matter of time before there would be only one Clegane alive. "Brian!" Sansa screamed, pointing at a boy in mail creeping behind the Maid of Tarth. Brian rolled to the ship's side and the sword only grazed her neck. The pimply squire lunged forward, eager to push his advantage. Silent and swift as a shadow, Arya stepped behind the boy. Using both hands and holding needle like a spear, she stabbed the boy's back, the thin blade slipping under the chain links. The squire's eyes got big and he dropped his sword. Arya jerked his knife from its sheath and carved a red smile above the male coif, leaving the knife stuck in the throat. "Chet, Clydas." Arya pointed to the dead warhorse. "Remove this from the deck. Now." The Winter Town crew rushed to execute her order. Denise whistled loudly, and from the cargo hold, 24 white-faced children with dark eyes poured out. With knives, daggers, axes, and hatchets, they hacked, chopped and hewed at the dead horse, rendering the animal into bits of hair, meat, and bone. In scant minutes, enough of the bloody bits were tossed over the side to create a path to the mountain. "Brian!" Arya yelled. The Maid of Tarth nodded and pressed the mountain harder, raining savage blows down the left side. The combined efforts of Brian and the hound forced the mountain back, the great steel sword moving in a blur as it fended off both attackers. The mountain took his right hand off the 6-foot blade, and punched the helmetless Sander in the head. The hound fell hard to the ground, and the triumphant Gregor roared, turning his attention to beating down Brian. Arya drew Gram, the rippled blade forged at Harrenhal for her name day present. She lunged forward and the steel pierced the back of the right knee, cutting through mail and boiled leather between the plates covering the thigh and the calf. The mountain screamed, and Arya thrust her brother's gift into the left knee, severing the other hamstring. The crippled mountain collapsed to the ground, but when Brian stepped forward, the mountain wrapped a huge arm around her leg, dragging the lady to the ground. The mountain's right hand grabbed Brian's throat. Arya ran forward and sliced at the gauntlet. The awkward stroke only glanced off the thick steel with a skid. The mountain somehow got up on his knees and swung the huge sword at the hidden tormentor. If Arya were a few inches taller, the blade would have chopped her head in half. Instead, the sword cut deeply into the mast, and gashed the heavy linen sails. Arya scrambled, desperately trying to avoid Clegane's grasp. Brian pounded on the mountain's breastplate with two armored fists, only to be swatted away like a gnat biting an elephant. Arya heard Sansa and Jane screaming, and then a quarrel whistled through the air, piercing the right pauldron, the bolts fletching sticking out from the shoulder. "Get away from my sister!" Jon Snow said, the Black Tom hissing by his side. Jon ran forward and smashed the crossbow on the bucket helm. The broken pieces of wood covered the two eye slits. He dragged Arya to safety. Brian took the groggy hound by his arms and pulled him away. The mountain shook off the blow from the crossbow, and tried to stand. Even on his knees, he was almost as tall as Brian. "I stabbed the mountain in both knees, but he is still fighting," Arya said. Her brother picked up the hound's longsword and faced Gregor, with Arya and Brian flanking the crippled beast. Jon stayed at the edge of the mountain's reach, only blocking and backstepping. He didn't bother to attack. "Chet, how much wildfire do we still have?" "Only one satchel left, my lord." 10 vials. "You wanted to take it back north to study. Put them all in that large bucket." Jon continued to parry the mountain's swings. The hound had regained his feet when Chet was finished. Jon tossed the sword to Sander and the hound warily took his place. Lord Snow, are you certain that the ship will be safe? Captain Mardaily asked. Safe enough. John shattered the vials with the pommel of a dagger. The murky green liquid shimmered in the bucket. He circled the deck, until the mountain, focused on the other threats, could not see him. John ran, jumped in the air, and slammed the bucket on Gregor Clegane's head. More clay and glass broke and wildfire dripped down the mountain's armor, from the crest of the helmet, into the narrow eye slits, down the gaps of the gorget, and into the broken right pauldron. For once, the mountain bellowed in abject fear, like a bull led to the slaughter. John reached out his right arm, and a frightened boy handed him a lit torch before rapidly retreating. Everyone besides her brother fell back, Arya included. John thrust the torch into the holes of the great helm, and a plume of green flame exploded upward. In his agony, the mountain shook off the fragments of the bucket, the worn wood now lighting up the harbor with a dark emerald green, burning on the surface. Gregor reached out in desperation, but John stabbed the torch into the right pauldron, already broken by the bolt. The huge right arm joined the mountain's head, wreathed in green flames. The searing heat did not bother her brother. The torch traced down the thick plate armor, the neck gorget, the top of the breastplate, the underarms, the gap between the gauntlets and the vambraces. An awful acrid stench filled the evening air, and Arya realized it was burnt flesh, burnt skin, burnt hair. The mountain collapsed face down, writhing as the wildfire cooked the beast alive. John tossed the torch into the water. He took the mountain's 6-foot word in both hands. He lifted the fiery blade high, and using all his weight, slammed the sword down, chopping off the right hand. John hacked off the left arm at the elbow, and the right foot before carefully measuring his next attempt. He severed the neck between the helm and the gorget. That took 2 blows. He dumped the flaming flesh off the boat, saving only the mountain's head. Many eyes watched, some horrified, many afraid, and a few satisfied at the day's work. Are we ready? His voice carried over the water. The captains and their crews silently nodded. John checked that everyone was on board, the rescuers, the Wintertown boys, and Very's little birds. The mare, the palfrey, and Sanders' stallion were led up the gangplank. Let's go home. Author's notes. The Northern Army has landed at Old Stones, and the king is Tristai for Mud 4 who won 99 battles but lost the last, ending House Mud's rule over the Riverlands. The food that Wylis despises is the menu from the Red Wedding, minus the gelid calf's brains and lush of stringy beef. The pork pie is a reference to the famous Mardaily free pie. Yummy. In Chap 34 of Dance with Dragons, Brandon Stark has visions when the children feed him a bowl of weirwood paste. LSD, anyone? One vision is a pale, fierce dark-eyed young man, who slices 3 branches off the weirwood. This is Brandon Snow. These shoes are a real thing. Krakow shoes, thought to have originated in Krakow, Poland, have extremely long toes and were popular in the 15th century. The poulain is the pointed beak of the shoe that curves inward. And incredibly, only nobles and lords could wear toe lengths longer than 2 inches. The Krakows weren't designed to add height, but the idea of a very long pointy tip fits the Lannisters. The Dornish do wear a huge amount of copper, which makes sense as the metal shines in the sun but is cheaper than gold. Copper is even used in their armor. Oberyn Martell has a gilded helm with a copper sun and Aeryo Hotter has a shirt of copper scales. The sand snakes in the TV show and even in the books just look awful. The fight scene with Bronn and Kym was lame. Wouldn't a whip be ineffective against any armored opponent or even a half-decent shield? But conceptually, female fighters with exotic weapons are awesome. GRM-based septons on priests. The bishop hat, mitre, became the 7-sided crystal coronal. I turned the bishop staff, crozier, into something carried by the most devout. The crozier had 3 parts, a sharp end, a straight middle, and a bent head. As for the billowing robes, I researched medieval monks. Today, we imagine monks to be thin and always fasting. Historically though, monks pigged out. The fat jolly friar was an accurate stereotype. They led a sedentary lifestyle and they ate a lot of calories, suet, lard and butter. Monks were 3 times as likely to develop obesity-related diseases. Book Jane is a sad character. She is the one Ramsay rapes as the false Arya Stark. I reread that and realized that Jaime told Brian about the Arya plot so Brian doesn't attempt to rescue You can rationalize this because Brian continues her search for Sansa. But the other interpretation is that Brian just looks the other way. The Theon chapters with Jane are quite horrific. Arya's sequence is time-sensitive. She has to get everything done after the nobles have gone into the September but before the wedding starts. Brian has to undress, they have to strip Sir Osmond's garments off, and then Brian has to don some armor. I don't know much about armor, but squires were supposed to be able to take off a suit of plate in 10 to 15 minutes. With the black kettle surcoat, you do not have to put on all the pieces. Surcoats can cover from the neck to the mid-calf. Brian only needs a few pieces, the surcoat and the cloak. The idea of the white and grey cloaks is inspired by the 1999 Thomas Crown affair. The hero uses a ton of lookalikes to distract attention and blend into the crowd during the heist. The sequence is set to Cinnamon by Nina Simone. Jon shoots a flaming bolt into one cask at the floor level. He also had put 2 more barrels in the cellar of White Sword Tower, one of the entrances into the secret passages. The entire Kingsguard is busy in Dawn or at the wedding, so the tower is virtually abandoned. Chamfering is how wooden spears are made today. They use belt sanders and power drills, but the point is to round the steel socket and to taper the shaft head for that precision fit. Ellaria's character is quite different in the books. In the show, she is bloodthirsty, pushing Doran to avenge Oberyn. In the book, she tries to convince the older Sand Snakes not to pursue revenge. She takes her youngest, a 7-year-old, back to Hellholt, away from any war. The Oberyn dialogue with Ellaria comes from the Conan the Barbarian dialogue with Bolette in Queen of the Black Coast, one of the best Robert E. Howard stories. The two are discussing gods and life beyond death. The full quote is, "Let me live deep while I live, let me know the rich juices of red meat and stinging wine on my palate, the hot embrace of white arms, the mad exultation of battle when the blue blades flame crimson, and I am content." I like Oberyn Martell, he is one of the best secondary characters in the book and show. But manticore poison is supposed to kill as soon as the venom gets to the heart. They explain this in the book by saying Oberyn used sorcery to thicken the venom. It is so stupid. The mountain should have died and then the Dornish wouldn't come off as so incompetent. In the TV series, Sansa's hair is done elaborately for both the Tyrion and the Ramsay wedding. Both times, it is pulled back in a severe bun. The medieval ideal is a high round forehead, and women plucked their hair and eyebrows often using copper or silver tweezers. So by ripping off the needles, Arya makes her sister look more low-born. The rope dart or rope javelin that Elros improvised is a martial arts weapon from Asia. It is a long rope, 10 to 16 feet, with a metal dart at one end. Skillful use of the rope dart allows you to stay beyond enemy reach and strike rapidly. Rope dart masters can twirl the rope around a foot, knee, elbow and even the neck. Elros is not a master, she is using the most basic attack. GRM has said that Margaery Tyrell has historical similarities with Anne Boleyn besides Natalia Dormer playing both roles. I don't know if that is a comment on political cunning, bad luck in marriage, or a general desire to help people. The Gold Cloaks, City Guard, really do have a barrack close to the Tower of the Hand. Clegane goes there after fighting Oberyn. The pimply squire is also killed by Arya in the books. Castration did different things to the human body. Eunuchs were hairless and tended to be fat. They were also reputed to be foul-smelling, probably because of trouble urinating. That also likely explains the perfume. The eunuch's dialogue is part show, part book. Show Varys is an idealistic freedom fighter while Book Varys is morally grey, and does a lot of terrible things. Show Varys is always shown as a good guy and comes off contrived, particularly in the last 2 seasons. I prefer Book Varys. Chapter 33, A Death in the Family. Chapter text. A Death in the Family. There were not enough troops. Then again, 500 more guards would not have made a whit of difference. A thin line of gold cloaks and sellswords dawdled about the harbour in a futile effort to push back the throngs of spectators. That morning, clever merchants moved the market in Fishmongers Square to the docks outside the river gate. Silver stags and copper stars changed hands to the cries of fishmongers, tavern wenches, and street peddlers selling food and drink to a spellbound audience listening to exaggerated tales of the wildfire wedding. Tyrion stifled a yawn. The destruction of the Tower of the Hand was not the reason for his lack of sleep. His lord father demanded that Jaime and Tyrion lead the watch and Lannister guards in scouring the Red Keep thoroughly for traces of Snow and his confederates. They discovered the bodies of Pycelle and Kettle Black in the Royal September. They tried and failed to identify the hundreds of corpses in the ruins of White Sword Tower. But the real work was combing through the myriad secret passages under the castle. A dozen teams of men armed with torches, lamps, and long poles were sent into the labyrinthine tunnels, and that difficult task had barely begun before disturbing news reached the Red Keep. Somehow, the Mountain had followed Sansa Stark to the wharf, only to get embroiled in a vicious fight. But this time, his father's most feared beast met his match. Tales of the Mountain's last rite spread through every tavern in King's Landing. With nightfall, it was too dark to trawl the rush. That was why Tyrion had come to the docks that morning. They found something, Bronn said, pointing to the river rats surfacing out of the water. One boy waved a giant blackened hand in a charred gauntlet. Two other urchins carried a metal-encased forearm severed at the elbow, and raised their prize in the air to the lusty cheers of the crowd. Tyrion sighed. This would not improve his father's temperament. The Mountain died unarmed, Bronn quipped as they walked closer. Tyrion was not the only one curious about the remains. A dark-haired man approached, flanked by an entourage of sand snakes and Dornish guards. He eyed the long and deadly spear resting in the man's hand carefully. Tyrion Lannister. I am surprised you are not drowning your sorrows over your lost bride. And I am surprised you are awake so early, Prince Oberyn. I thought you would celebrate House Lannister's misfortunes well into the night. Celebrate? Why, House Lannister has not suffered enough misfortune. The Mountain is dead but your father is alive. Your bastard nephew sits on the Iron Throne. Be careful what you say, Prince Oberyn. King's Landing is full of spies, and it is dangerous to speak against the throne. The Red Viper laughed. Less so than yesterday. Tell me, is it true? My guards hear that the spider was discovered last night in the tunnels, shot by a crossbow. Not the tunnels but the cellar with the dragon skulls. The tunnels crisscross multiple rooms below the castle. It is all rather confusing. Snow must have killed Lord Varys after escaping the throne room. Tyrion said. That changes things. The spider whispered certain promises that he won't be able to keep. Oberyn was hiding something behind that saturnine face. Tyrion preferred his enemies rash and hot-headed, not thoughtful and composed. Vipers were more dangerous hiding in the grass. What promises were these? You don't need to know. A dead man. A dead plan. Oberyn said. As Hand of the King, Tyrion had little choice but to rely on Varys. No one, not even Lord Baelish, knew more secrets about the Game of Thrones than the spider. The eunuch had been whispering to the Martells. But about what? Had he placed Myrcella in danger? Oh, Tyrion. Bronn walked over from a crowd of small folk. I spoke to the dock workers. They saw Clegane at the harbour. Of course they did. Tyrion said, pointing at the severed hand and arm. Not Gregor. Sandor Clegane. The Hound and Brian of Tarth escorted a girl to a riverboat. The Mountain galloped up, and tried to kill them all. They were still fighting when Snow came, and burned the Mountain alive and chopped him to bits. Then the boat sailed west. And the Hound? He left with the Starks on the boat. Bronn said. The Hound had joined their enemies. The Mountain was dead. And so were Varys, Pycelle, Sir Osmond Kettle Black, and 3 other White Cloaks. And hundreds of guards and watchmen. A short fat-bellied man with thin balding hair strummed his fingers over a worn 12-string wood-arp. Lords and ladies, gentlefolk, let me spin a song about the rescue of a maiden from a horrible fate. Saved from the imp. The crowd brayed with amusement at the harper's words, and Tyrion realized that the Lannister name had become shit in King's Landing. Rays of light darted through makeshift cloth drapes erected for privacy on the Wolf Wind. Sansa Stark opened her eyes to see a cloaked Jane Poole tremble as she gazed at the morning sun rising over the stern. But they were no longer prisoners in the Tower of the Hand with a window over the sprawling fetid city. Instead, Sansa smelled the fresh clean air of the rush, heard the chirping of sparrows and shrikes, and felt the water flow under the boat and the stiff western wind blowing hard against the sails. It wasn't a dream. It really happened? Sansa said. Yes, my lady. Her friend handed over a plain woolen cloak to cover the garish orange gown. Jane sat down on their shared bed, and offered to braid Sansa's auburn locks. No need. Arya is right. Better to be a free small folk, than a captured highborn. Are we free? We could not have gotten very far from King's Landing. Jane said. Sansa pulled down the curtains, bathing in the golden sunlight. Brian and Sandor Clegane waited outside. The Maid of Tarth snapped to attention while the hound snorted, rolled his eyes, and returned to sharpening his sword. Lady Brian, where are we? I do not know, my lady. But I know someone who does. Brian said. They found the captain near the galley, where the smell of sardines, fried crisp in sizzling poppy oil with peppers, wafted through the air. A dozen hungry urchins waited in line as the winter town boy served hot fish on bread torn from loaves warmed over a fire. When they saw her, the chattering stopped. The urchins parted before them, and Chet piled a wooden trencher high with food. The smell of the sardines and oil made her stomach rumble. Lady Sansa, I am glad to see you well after a day of rest. Maturin Mandaily said. Where are we, sir? And do you think the Lannisters will pursue us? Sansa asked. We are half a day's sail from Tumbler's Falls. And I doubt they can. Queen Cersei has ordered a fleet of new warships built, giant dromons with hundreds of oars each, far too large to travel on the river. Even on the open sea, they are poor vessels, slow and hard to maneuver. What about the Gold Road? Couldn't we be attacked where the road crosses the Black Water? The Hound asked. The Mandaily man spoke directly to Sansa. Robb Stark ordered the bridge at the Black Water destroyed many moons ago. And the crossing is in the Riverlands. With the victory at the God's Eye, no one will challenge the Starks there. Sansa broke her fast on sardines, so hot that she nearly burned her tongue and needed to drink black ale mixed with river water. The dripping oil, the crusty bread, the fried fish, it was no lavish feast with exotic spices, fresh fruits, sweetmeats, and arbor wine. The breakfast was simple food leavened with the taste of freedom. No meal could be more satisfying. Robb Stark rode side by side with Lord Jason and his eldest son Patrek as the army approached Seaguard, only a short hop away from the headwaters of the Blue Fork. Seaguard was a walled town, set on a hill, overlooking Iron Man's Bay and the Cape of Eagles. Encircled by 3 walls, the highest point was the Mallister Castle, but Seaguard had a dozen towers of varying heights, including the one that held the immense bronze bell. 10 years ago, the booming bell rang for the first time in centuries, calling the townsfolk to shelter near the castle when the longships were sighted. The Greyjoy rebellion had faltered here when Jason Mallister slew Roderick Greyjoy, Bolon's heir, under the walls and drove the Ironborn back into the sea. The reavers from Pike had never forgotten their defeat. Small folk lined the walls about Seaguard, cheering and whistling the return of their fighting men and the coming of the Northern Army. Lord Jason held his blazon high in the air, a silver eagle on a purple field, that matched the winged helms of the Eagle Knights. House Mallister had a proud and noble lineage, more glorious than their Tully overlords. Lord Stark, shall we prepare you a feast? Patrek Mallister asked eagerly. Robb shook his head. No, battle plans come first. Feasts can wait after the fight. They rode past the great central square into the castle. The 3 direwolves followed. The northern commanders gathered in the solar. Lord Jason ceded the honor of the ornate wooden throne, and Robb remembered that 500 years ago, the Mallisters had been one of the many riverlords who had claimed to be king of the Trident. Longships have been sighted on the edge of the cape, perhaps 5 days away. Patrek said. How many? Robb asked. 60. Ships of the Iron Fleet that can hold 100 fighters each, but probably less than that. I don't see how Euron Crow's I can field that many men. Patrek said. Why not? Robb asked. The Crow's Eye ship is the Silence. The ship is crewed entirely by mutes whose tongues he ripped out. Lord Jason said. Euron rips out the tongues of his men and they still serve him. Robb asked aghast. Why would anyone do that? He is a madman, the worst of the Greyjoys, and that's saying quite a bit. He attracts fools and mongrels from all over the known world, monsters who lust for rape and pillage. The Silence has plundered ships from Iben to Ash High. Willis Mardaily said. Rob shook his head at the Ironborn. How many ships do we have? 2 war galleys to defend the harbor. We have 6 longships, but they are small, less than half the size of the ships in the Iron Fleet. Jason said. 2 galleys and 6 small longboats. That is your entire fleet? The Great Jon asked in disbelief. Patrick Maester flushed. We are merchants, not raiders. We don't sail longships to sack towns. Our harbor is home to cogs and other trading vessels. But you have many cogs. I counted at least 24 large ships in the harbor. Can they be used for war? Rob asked. The Malisters, Flints and Mardalis had a hushed conference. My lord, there is a great difference between a cog and a galley. Galleys and longships use both oars and the sail. That means far more of the crew have to work at rowing. An Ironborn longship is shallow and light, and double-ended, so it can swiftly reverse direction. A cog has only one sail and no oars, so it can hold far more cargo with a smaller crew, but without any wind, it would be becalmed, and fall prey to raiders. But without the need for rowers, a cog could carry far more fighting men. Rob mused. True, my lord. In a war galley, more than half the men tend to the oars. But every Ironborn rows and fights. That's why the Reavers are so effective at raiding. Patrick said. If the Greyjoys get past Seaguard, their longships could attack up and down the Trident, like House Hoare before the dragons burned them in Harrenhal. Lord Jason said. How skilled are the merchant captains? Can they handle their cogs against a longship? Rob asked. The men of Seaguard are good sailors. But no man can sail upwind. When the Ironborn stormed Seaguard, we met them at the town walls. The squids would be delighted to fight our small fleet in the bay. Patrick said. But cogs would not be easy to board on the open seas. Their sides are much taller. Rob said. A cog has a high freeboard. Sailors can fight off one longship. But if a merchant vessel is swarmed by 4 or 5 longboats, the crew would be slain and the ship taken as a prize. Willis Mardaily said. Lord Stark, the Greyjoys expect us to give battle at the walls, not in the waters. The Ironborn will hug the shoreline before the attack. Our scouts have sighted them on the western tip of the Cape of Eagles. It would be madness to sail our galleys forth. Lord Jason said. Rob turned his eyes west toward the harbor. War is madness. My lords, there is only one way to fight and win. Never attack where and when the other man expects. Take me to the ships and captains. The squids pride themselves in ruling the waves. We will prove them wrong. The morning mists off the river had faded into wisps of grey. Here and there, boats fished for trout and river pike, occasionally hailing the 3 riverboats. The black water was mostly deserted. Few merchants dared to travel between the God's Eye and King's Landing. To the amusement of Sandor Clegane, and the astonishment of everyone else, Arya practiced the water dance on the Wolf Wind. Her sister stood sideways, keeping her balance while she thrust, spun and lunged with her 2 blades, one a smoky grey rapier and the other an even thinner dirk. The urchins gawked and gaped as Arya danced about the deck. That's not fighting. The Hound snorted. If you want to kill a man you need armor and a big fucking sword, not nancying around like a ponce. I stabbed the mountain through his knees. Arya yelled back. Only because Gregor was facing us, the Hound replied. And he would have killed you even on his knees, had Snow not shot him with a crossbow. Where is your brother, Lady Arya? Brian asked. Arya glared at Sandor and then abruptly sheathed both blades in a blink of an eye. I will take you to him. They found Jon in the dark cargo hold, examining several of the little birds, under the light of a candle held by Chet. He checked their faces and mouths, examined bony ribs, and had them walk back and forth. The children submitted quietly, without a murmur, and when each finished, they were each given several copper stars, and a sweet cake, soaked in honey. Buzdryixos dea. Jon said to a boy with a bruised cheek. The urchin gave a shy smile, and munched on the cake. What language is that? Arya asked. Pentoshi, a bastard dialect of High Valyrian. I told him that he is not a slave. Jon answered. How are they? Arya asked, as Sansa and Jane sat down on hard wooden boxes while Sander and Brian stood. Better than I expected. Half a dozen on the Wolf Wind with their tongues cut out. Less that number on the other two ships. Perhaps the others died more quickly. Jon replied. Who would rip out the tongue out of a child? An outraged Brian asked. Varys. He wanted spies that could not talk. Jon said. If I return to King's Landing, I will have words with him. How can the king and the Hand allow such horrors? Brian said. Don't bother. The eunuch is dead. Jon said. Jon, I never thanked you for rescuing me. Sansa said. I didn't rescue you, Sansa. We rescued you, all of us. Arya and I needed the help of the others. Jane and Brian provided a distraction and the Wintertown boys were critical in the scheme. I did not expect the Hound, but no plan goes perfectly. Jon said. You tricked me into taking Lady Jane from the castle. Brian said. Jon shrugged. It was the only way for you to escape. The secret tunnel in the Tower of the Hand is so narrow that a man has to crawl. Imagine if your plate armor got stuck in the dark. Still, you could have told me, she whinged. Why? How would that have helped? You should thank us for taking you away from King's Landing. What do you think the Lannisters would do to you? How long would it take for you to break from torture? Jon said to a stunned Brian. Snow, I want to thank you. For killing my brother. Sander said grudgingly. We killed the Mountain. You, Brian, and Arya. I only delivered the final blow. But I am glad that he died screaming. Actually, I expected the Martells to kill him. I wonder what went wrong. 7 hells. The Martells were involved. The Hound said. Jon nodded. The Red Viper hates the Lannisters. And he has wanted revenge for 16 years. But enough about that. What about you, Clegane? What do you want? I wanted my brother dead for many years. But now, I don't know. I can't go back to King's Landing, and I have thrown away my white cloak. Might be, I could serve your brother. I am a better killer than most. How much gold will you pay? The Hound said. We have plenty of gold, but do you really care? Did you serve the Lannisters for gold? My grandfather was kennel master to Tytos, Tywin's father. He saved him from a lioness at a cost of a leg and 3 dogs. My father was Tytos's squire and became a knight. We served the Lannisters because of lands and a title. There is a lot of land in the north. But how do we know you will be loyal? Jon asked. Sander Clegane has broken his vows to the Iron Throne. He is no knight. Brian said. Gregor Clegane was a knight. So was Amory Lorque. Knights are not better than other men. The Hound is not the only man who soiled the White Cloak. Gold I can give you. Land I can grant you. And a title, if you wish. But House Stark needs loyal men and women. Jon said. But Jon, the Hound murdered Micah. Jory said. Sander Clegane ran him down and cut him in half with a sword. He wasn't even armed. Arya said. Who the hell is Micah? The Hound answered his own question. Oh, the butcher's boy who tossed Joff's pretty sword in the river. They told me he attacked the prince. I was Joffrey's sworn shield. I was ordered by the queen to bring him back. I attacked Joffrey. He swung his sword at me, and Nymeria bit him. I should have let my direwolf kill him then. Arya said. Jon held his angry sister back. We have all done terrible things, Arya. What matters is what we do now. I am a killer, Snow. I've killed my first man at 12. I have lost count of how many I killed since. But you have killed more. You had my brother's men slaughtered, and his pet rats deserved killing. You killed thousands more at the Red Fork and at the God's Eye. Death in battle is different. That is a fair fight, not killing an unarmed boy. Brian said. You are still dead. There were 100 Micahs at the God's Eye. There will be no songs about their deaths. I have killed loads of people, lords, knights, merchants, even children and women. But less than Snow. Sander said. We need swords, and we need killers. The war is not over. Tywin Lannister, the Greyjoys, House Stark has enemies. Clegane, will you fight for the North? Jon said. I will. Just point to who you want me to kill. The Hound chuckled. No killing for now. Just guard my sisters. And there is something else, something important. His eyes swept over the small crowd. I want to know exactly what happened in King's Landing. Every detail. Every word. What's there to say, Snow? You shat on Tywin Lannister's head and sailed off, the Hound said. Fighting a war is more than swinging a sword. We need to know our enemy and their plots. What they have done, and why they did it. Joffrey, Tywin, Tyrion, Cersei, the small council. Jane Poole spoke first. I will tell you what happened after they arrested Lord Stark. They killed my father and gave me to. Her face reddened and she broke down sobbing. Jane greatly suffered at Lord Baelish's hands. Must she relive those moments? Sansa said. Yes, but she can speak to me alone. As will all of you, including the Hound. The more we know, the better we can prepare. Modesty will get us killed. There is no shame in suffering. It is only regrettable if we don't fight back. Jon said. The crying girl nodded silently. 200 Lannister guards in red cloaks, led by Captain Vylar, patrolled the Great Hall of the Red Keep. Such a gesture might be symbolic but came a day late and many dragons short. The horse had already left the barn, after shitting all over the floor, the walls, and even the roof. Pyromancers surrounded the Iron Throne, and almost 24 hours later, spectral green sparks still smoldered on the spikes and edges. The Iron Throne no longer resembled a chair. The crest of swords had melted down, dripping grey slag on the steep steps. The spikes and barbs fused together into oddly shaped clumps. The twisted blades did not fan out like talons of some great metal beast, but rather formed a confused lump of tangled and tortured steel. After 300 years, the once fearsome symbol of Aegon's conquest was ruined. Only dragon flame, the fires beneath the earth and the sun in the summer sky are hotter than wildfire. The pompous hall in lectured a parcel of apprentices. What an ass, Tyrion thought. No one had seen a dragon in 150 years, and if they had, they would never measure the temperature of their breath to wildfire. No, unless you were a Targaryen, the only sensible reaction to dragon fire was to run away screaming. Only dragons did not fear dragons. Lord Tywin held court over a much diminished small council. Mace Tyrell sat in an oaken chair shaped like a giant green hand, complete with a fleshy thumb and protruding nail. The Rose Lord insisted the ridiculous seat was a tribute to the mythical Garth Greenhand and the long-extinct House Gardener. No one was fooled by the absurd claim. We found a few more caches, under the September of Baelor and many of the city gates. Jaime said. Why did you not tell anyone that Aerys plotted to burn down King's Landing? Had you done so, you would be a hero. And Snow would not have found the wildfire. Tywin said. The Knights of the King's Guard are sworn to keep the King's secret. And do you think Ned Stark would have believed me? Jaime replied. Of course he would. Oberyn Martell said. His father and brother were burnt alive by wildfire. I hunted down the pyromancers involved, Rossart, Garrigus and Bellis. After they died, no one knew where the caches were. Jaime said. I doubt that the Dornishman said there were several hundred jars in the tunnels below the Great September. Do you think 3 men moved them all? The Alchemists Guild must have known. Jaime responded only with a mulish silence. What of the whores, Baelish? Did you question them? Tywin said. I did, my lord. None of them saw Jon Snow. He never frequented a brothel. Either the bastard is a sorcerer or he has spies in King's Landing. Baelish said. We need to punish Snow for his antics. He threatened my Margaery. Highgarden will not allow such villainy to go without a reply. The honor of House Tyrell demands satisfaction. Mace Tyrell was as dull and ponderous as his chair. Why? Why should we do anything? Tyrion said. But the insult. Mace sputtered. He endangered the future Queen of the Seven Kingdoms. If he wanted Margaery Tyrell dead, she would be. Snow has left King's Landing. Sansa Stark will never want to see this city again. We have reports that Robb Stark is leading an army up the Trident to fight the Greyjoys. Let the Northmen go north. Tyrion said. Why, Lord Tyrion? I thought you would be more eager to recover your bride. Baelish smiled. Do you wish to take Lady Sansa back? Then go, Lord Baelish. Ride for Harrenhal, or Riverrun, or Winterfell. Perhaps, the Starks will welcome you like they did the Mountain. Sir Gregor was burnt alive and cut into many pieces. Do you think the wolves have discovered your betrayal of Ned Stark? Go north and you will find out. Tyrion said. Lady Sansa does not know. So how would the Starks find out? Baelish said. Sandor Clegane knows. He joined the Starks and sailed away from the city, after fighting Sir Gregor on the ship. Tyrion said, wiping the stupid smirk from Littlefinger's face. The Starks remain a threat to the Iron Throne. Tywin said. No, they do not. Tyrion said, his response eliciting an angry glare from his father. Out, everyone. This meeting is over. Tywin Lannister was used to having his orders followed, even by the great lords. Not you, Jaime. The Old Lion waited until Mace Tyrell, Petyr Baelish, and Oberyn Martell left the cavernous Great Hall, and only the three Lannisters remained. Have you turned craven? Tywin barked. No, I see no benefit in continuing to fight the North. The Lannisters have met Robb Stark and Jon Snow in battle many times. We have not fared well. Why continue? Tyrion said. The Starks are a threat to Joffrey. Tywin said. Joffrey is a threat to Joffrey. Tyrion retorted, the Starks do not want the Iron Throne. Ned Stark arrived at King's Landing before the other rebels. He could have taken the throne, and Jon Arryn and Robert Baratheon would have agreed. Ned Stark chose to return north. Robb Stark is like his father. He values honor and wants only to be Lord of Winterfell. The Northern Army was 3 days away, and yet they did not march on the capital. What does that tell you, father? The young wolf does not want to be king. He does not want to bend his knee to Joffrey, either. Jaime said. Who does? Joffrey is a vicious idiot. We should make peace with the Starks. Tyrion said. How do you propose to do that? We have no hostages. Jaime said. Robb Stark wanted his father returned as Warden of the North, and his sister Sansa freed. We cannot do the first, but he has the second. Give him back Ice. It was his father's sword and has belonged to their house for centuries. The Starks may despise Joffrey, but we will be safer when they are back home. Like Sunspear, Winterfell is far away. Tyrion said. No, I will not be called a toothless lion. Jon Snow defied us in front of the entire royal court. We are Lannisters. I won't let our house be shamed. Tywin raged. Tyrion shrugged. They laugh at me all the time, father. They call me imp, half-man, and demon monkey. You told us many times that a lion does not care about the opinions of sheep. Let the wolves return north. We would still hold the Iron Throne. They do not laugh at me. They will not laugh at me. Tywin slammed the table hard. I will pay the Starks back for this. How, father? Tyrion is right. No one wants to face Robb Stark and Jon Snow in battle. And that was before the wildfire. Most of our knights are dead and many of our lords are captured. The Northmen may be savages, but they can certainly fight. Jaime said. There are other ways to skin a wolf. Tywin said ominously. Tyrion sighed. His father never listened. There were ways to skin lions too. They left their scowling sire with a pile of parchment and a trio of fawning maesters. Tyrion led Jaime to the solar of the kitchen keep, overlooking the pig yards. Last night, Bronn and his sellswords commandeered the servant quarters, leaving the dwarf with a spacious suite with a large bedchamber, dressing room, solar and privy. Even the pigs did not smell that badly, given the constant scents of the kitchen. Wine, Pardrick. Tyrion reclined on a velvet divan, resting aching feet on a wooden stool. Jaime paced back and forth, spoiling the view of the bay. And a brace of ducks, roasted over coals with quails drowned in butter, chestnut soup, hot bread and cheese. He clapped happily at the full goblets of arbor gold, and quaffed deeply, smacking his lips at the taste of oak and fruit. Tyrion, it is the custom to celebrate at the wedding, not when your bride flees. Jaime said. But I am happy, brother. 2 days ago, I worried about the Starks cutting my cock off if they found me with Sansa Stark. Last night, I feared being burnt alive by wildfire. And today, I am free to drink wine and visit whores. Tyrion raised stubby arms in mock triumph. Tyrion, our Lord Father is livid. You know why he hated the Reynes and Tarbecks. He despises anyone who mocks House Lannister. Yes, yes. I am all too familiar with the Reynes of Castemaria. Well, I have given him good advice. He may be too proud to take it, but I have no desire to twist the lion's tail. I don't see how we can make peace. The North will never forgive the death of Ned Stark. The wolves hate the lions and Father knows that. Our father believes that everything that happens in the Seven Kingdoms revolves around him. He is wrong. Think about what Snow did and said at the wedding. What do you mean? Jaime, if Snow truly hated House Lannister, last night would have been quite different. I stood at the altar when he revealed himself. I am a Lannister, even if I am short and unloved. Snow could have killed me easily. He also captured Margaery Tyrell. Her marriage to Joffrey is what keeps us on the Iron Throne. If Snow hated our house, he would have killed her. Think of how weak our position would be without an alliance with Highgarden. Podrick served the creamy chestnut soup from a large tureen into 2 smaller bowls. Tyrion dipped the crusty bread into the thick bisque, sprinkled on top with smoked duck breast, goat cheese, chopped herbs and crisp croutons. He ate eagerly, while his brother only nibbled. Snow's anger is directed at the crown. In the September, he talked about justice for Ned Stark, Princess Elia, Aegon and Rhaenys. 3 of those are Martells. He saved wildfire for the Iron Throne when he could have burned down the Royal September. And another thing. Gregor Clegane's death was no accident. Sir Jacelyn tells me that Gregor killed a gold cloak when he demanded a maester. The mountain was hurt before he left the castle. How? Jaime asked. Oberyn Martell was seen with a spear leaving the Tower of the Hand. How he got a long spear, so soon after the September, is the better question. Snow is in league with the Martells. Jaime realized. Perhaps, but there is no proof. We have no idea whether the Starks have other spies or allies in the capital. We have no idea why Varys was killed, or how Snow managed to kill Pycelle or Osmond Kettle Black in the September. And there is no chance of claiming Winterfell without Sansa. There is no good reason to continue this war. There are many bad ones. Pride, anger, refusing to admit our losses. A truce, however temporary, would serve House Lannister better. Jaime shook his head. Father will never agree to that. He wants a dynasty that will last 1,000 years. So that the Lannister name will live forever. Tyrion wiped the soup from his mouth. Jaime, that is a bunch of codswallop. Joffrey's dynasty may end in less than a decade. And even if it lasts, the name will be Baratheon, not Lannister. House Lannister has ruled Casterly Rock for 4,000 years. That will continue no matter who is on the Iron Throne. Father's actions are not for our house. Everything he does for his own glory. He hates the Starks because they have made him look foolish. He won't stop, Tyrion. Father will fight to the bitter end. Jaime said. So will the Starks. Arya stayed out of sight until the wolf wind had departed Tumbler's Falls. There, the 3 boats replenished their provisions, taking in barrels of salt cod, salt beef, salt pork, flour, peas, biscuits, and beer. The winter town boys bought fresh fruits and vegetables from merchants, apples, beans, cabbage, onions, turnips and beets. A great iron vat was heated in the galley, and bubbled over with coarse oats and water, thickened into a glutinous porridge. The burgoo was ladled into wooden bowls, and then the cook added a pat of butter, blackstrap molasses, and a dollop of the greasy fat skimmed from the salt meat. Burgoo would never be served at a royal feast, but the oatmeal and hardtack biscuits made a hearty midday meal. Jon stood at the ship's bow after he finished speaking with Sandor Clegane. The Hound had exchanged his white cloak for thick brown robes, hiding his grey plate armor. He might have looked like a farmer but for the mountain's 6-foot sword, strapped on his back. What did you find out? Arya asked. A hesitant Sansa joined her as well, and the Stark sisters waited for their brother to compose his thoughts. We should have killed Baelish. Baelish, not Tywin Lannister? Arya asked. Petyr Baelish had Jane raped again and again in his brothels. Sansa said. That is not the only reason we should kill him. Baelish planned to sell Jane as Arya Stark. He asked her questions about Winterfell, Maester Wolf, who was the Master of Arms, the captain